Hey, it's me, Bobo, from the Art of Possibility podcast. Do you like nature? Damn straight. So do I. So in light of that, today we have a very special guest, environmentalist and accomplished civil engineer, Mr. Phil Damon. In this episode, we discuss all aspects of conservation, because there's an art to making it happen. From what you, the average person, can do to help local wildlife, to how legislation and corporate entities are impacting ecosystems at large, this was an episode with lots of interesting talking points about our planet and how we can protect it for generations to come. So kick back, relax, and listen to episode 8 with Phil Damon.
All right, my name's Phil Damon, and I work for a family company, and we do civil engineering and land surveying. So I'm like a project manager right now, and kind of have a focus on environmental impact and things like that. So
cool.
You don't just work for any family company. You work for your family company, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and so it was like a weird process getting to that point. My dad and my grandfather, my great-grandfather, and my great-great-grandfather all worked for our company. So, like, you know, you kind of reach that point in your life. And, you know, my dad started off working at DEP. He wasn't going to go into the family business.
What is DEP?
Department of Environmental Protection.
Oh, right.
So he was like, my dad was like going to landfills and doing testing. He was all like kind of a hippie, you know,
Right.
like the old school
Right.
environmentalist.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was like, you know what, he saw a good opportunity with our family company. It was downsized to the point where he could have a really good impact on things and
Right.
not have to have like a boss basically staring over him at all times. Like there's something about the freedom of working for yourself. It's really cool.
So what type of company is it? Like, what's the company structure? What kind of contracts do you get if it's contracts, stuff like that, you know?
Yeah, so like it right now we're pretty small, and our contracts that we get are through like local municipalities. So like you mentioned Norristown or, you know, places like that. They would approach us and be like, hey, we want to check out our sewer systems. And they would hire us, and we would, you know, basically draw up a map of their sewer systems. And we would, you know, talk about what condition they're in. And we would make recommendations of what to do for that particular situation. And, you know.
What kind of work does that entail on your side? Like, are you literally drawing blueprints of this?
That's what I'm doing, and I'm
Right.
working with the client to make sure that they're getting exactly what they need. But yeah, that's like my specialty is drafting.
Right.
I kind of got into it and just found my niche, you know.
Right.
I did the whole land surveying thing when I first started out. That's where you're going out in the field, you're setting up a tripod with like a GPS type device on top of it.
Yeah.
I've seen those
Right.
guys on the side of the road.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And what we're doing is we're going around and we're starting a reference map. And it basically looks like a sea of points when you bring it back into the CAD program. It's just like a bunch of little dots. And you're like, what the heck is this? And then you start hitting some like auto line work, and it connects the dots. And it creates like a really cool map. And it's actually can be converted into a 3D drawing, which is awesome.
So for anyone who doesn't know, you want to explain what CAD programs are, which ones you guys use, and roughly how much they might cost?
Yeah. Computer aided design is what CAD stands for. And right now, like the big players are Autodesk. So AutoCAD is what their company is. And it's
Right.
like, that is, it's come down in price because it's a subscription-based system right now, which I hate. I loathe because it's like a ball and chain, you know, like it. So what we're using is like an old school program. We're like, we've owned it for years, and we paid like $5,000 for it when we first got it, and that's just one seat, and we have like, you know, 4 or 5 seats. So, you know, when we invested that much money in it, it's like we want to keep that thing. And
Right.
you know.
That's how those kind of programs used to be. You know, I heard a radio ad on KYW the other day, and for anybody who's listening, we have absolutely no sponsors. I'm just saying this because I think it's interesting. So I heard a radio ad the other day for the Rosetta Stone mobile app, right? And that was one of those things back in the day, you'd go to like an Office Max or
Buy it for,
you'd
like,
go to Radio Shack and you'd
20
buy
bucks, 30 bucks.
and then it was yours, right? You
Yup.
pop in the CD, you install it, and there it
Dude.
is, right? And the radio ad really specified, they were like, if you buy the desktop software or the full app, you only pay once. That's it. And it's yours forever on multiple devices. And I remember thinking to myself, I had this like visual in my mind of like this board meeting when like whoever their, investors were like, you need to switch to a SaaS model. You'll make all these things. And there's the guy who's still there from the beginning standing up in the back who's like, no, we started this where you install a disk and it's going to be the same. And just, I have no idea if that's how it played out, but I remember imagining that and becoming so happy just by thinking about it. It's like some people stand up for the little things.
Right.
So what happened, is like in our company, it reached such a saturation level. Everybody owned the software.
Yeah.
So the company wasn't making money anymore. Like once every engineering company has the program, they pay the $5,000, they get it. What? We had a monthly fee for what is it called? Like when you have a company that just does when you ask them questions, if you had like a help desk,
Right.
Yeah.
they had a help desk and it was like $30 a month to belong to the help desk. So we had that.
Right.
And then this particular company, they moved to a subscription based and a lot of people jumped ship. This company is called Trimble. And a lot of companies were like, they were just like, we're going to go with Autodesk now because they're offering it for $5 less a month. And I don't know.
Yeah.
We ended up just keeping the old school program and we love it. Everybody knows it. It's like learning a language.
Right.
So like I know all the cheat codes.
Yeah.
So I've
Yeah.
optimized it and
Yeah.
so but
No.
it's basically to get back to what we were saying about like what we actually do. That's what we do. We make maps. We have some really cool maps because our company's so old. And one of my buddies, Sammy Vile,
Right.
he works for us and he's archiving all of our maps that go all the way back to like the early 1800s. He's
Wow.
scanning them with like a large format scanner. Thing's huge. It's like, massive machine. And we have a cloud-based company that holds all of our data and he's putting all of our plans one by one. I think he's scanned like 50,000 plans already. It's crazy what he's done. And
It's a cool project.
It happened because he got like fired from his job during the pandemic. He got let go, and we were like, "Dude, we can't have you like out of a job. Like, I'll find something for you to do."
Yeah.
And this is something we've wanted to do for so long. So I taught him how to do it, and he's slowly working with us. And
Nice.
Yeah.
Just
So,
building it up.
yeah.
So
The early 1800s.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's cool, man. And they
Yeah.
kept such good documentation of things. It's all on like this really nice linen paper, which is like I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like cloth, but they dip it in something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like really they knew what they were doing because it
Made the
stuck
last.
around.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I think it's the same stuff that like the old maps were made out of
Right.
like way back when.
And
You can see them
they
in
couldn't
museums.
they couldn't just like put a bunch of points in a program and type in a
No.
cheat code to get it to do it. They just
Exactly.
did math
Yeah,
and
man.
just drew lines. That's pretty crazy.
So that was what's cool is like when I first started at the company, we were, we had CAD and we did all that stuff, but I learned the old school way, how to measure things and then like draw the map with a scale where you're just like, it was very tedious. But you have a protractor,
Yeah.
you have a mechanical pencil, and you're literally like turning angles and scaling distances and putting points and then connecting the dots. It's like,
What year did needing to use that method kind of become obsolete?
our company would be a good example because we had some old school draftsmen that my dad refused to fire. And they're like in their 70s and he's not going to be like, sorry guys, we have to learn CAD. So we rode them out and until they were ready to go and
Good for your dad.
and then, so I would say like mid 2000s, we kind of, but every other company, they were like hand drafted. What are you talking about? We don't have any of
Yeah.
that because they're all cutthroat. Like
Yeah.
that's the cool thing about our company is that, we're real family based and, like during the, I don't know if you guys remember this, but like after 2008, there was a big market crash,
Right.
especially in our company or in our profession. So many people were just like let go, and we didn't let anybody go. Like my dad stopped taking a salary, and just to like, and he was real quiet about it. He didn't tell anybody. He had to take loans out to like keep us afloat.
Yeah.
So
Do what you got to do.
that's it's
But you muscled through it, and you're here now.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
What year was your company founded?
1894, and that's the year like my great grandfather like partner up with this guy in Darby, Pennsylvania.
Yeah. So I'm sure that's had to happen a couple times in the company's history, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, you ride it out.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was pretty lucky.
Yeah.
He came from a family, his dad died when he was really young, and his family were like merchants in Philadelphia. And they owned a shipping company that brought coffee into Philadelphia. So we have like old advertisements from like, the 1830s, 1840s, where it was like Damon and someone else, Damon and Sorver coffee in Philadelphia. So,
That's pretty cool.
That is cool.
Would you say that there are newer companies that do what you guys do that is it a business model people can just get into, right?
Yeah.
And like
Definitely.
do new players come on the scene frequently?
Yeah, believe it or
Right.
not, they do, because ever since like the pandemic, really, a lot of people have the flexibility of working remotely, and I'm all for it. I hate seeing like the big conglomerate companies in engineering right now. Like there's some, I won't badmouth anybody because I love, I have no like ill will towards other competitors, but there are some companies that they've established themselves at such a high regard, and they have so many employees, and they're just big companies. They can afford to have a lot of employees because they have such an inflow of money, and
Right.
so they can hire whoever they want right off the assembly line, like right from Drexel University. All the top engineers go to this one firm in Philadelphia.
Right.
Yeah.
And so,
Now, assuming it's a good company, right? Like, let's say hypothetical new engineering company A, right?
Yeah.
Comes onto the scene, they know what they're doing, and they're good, right? A lot of your guys' contracts come from municipalities, state contracts. Basically, it's tax money, right? Right. So
Some of it, yeah.
essentially, if you know what you're doing,
Grants and stuff.
yeah, grants, other,
It could be federal, it could be state,
exactly,
it could be
right?
ADA, it could be all sorts of different.
So if you know what you're doing, you can make this company last a very long period of time.
Yeah,
Right.
we're pretty fortunate that back in the post World War II like housing boom, our company happened to develop a lot of these. There was a huge need for housing.
Yeah.
The baby boomers. Like I guess it would be like your grandparents, my grandparents. Like, there was just a sick need for housing, and we did a lot of those subdivisions. So our name is on the deeds of a lot of these.
That's interesting.
So if you like, the first thing you're supposed to do, if you want this property surveyed right here, you would look on your deed. You would go on the county website, and it would say like on the description, it'll say like who originally subdivided this land, and our name is on there. So people Google like Damon Engineers, is it still around? And sure enough, there we go. We pop right up. So of course they're gonna call whoever did it first.
So now that I know some of these details, I think I think I definitely want to start asking about the larger area of things that I'm wondering about here. So it's possible to get into even in this day and age. It's something that can stick around for a long period of time. Now, let's talk a little bit about your proclivity to take care of the environment and how this type of work relates to it. Because
Sure.
I'd be interested to hear, like, there's a lot of people out there who care about the environment today,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of people want to find a way to have the work that they do each day make a meaningful impact for a longer period of time. Not have it
100%.
just be a quip, not just some random thing.
That's huge for
Yeah.
me, the moral compass of it all. It, the longer you're in this profession, the more you see like things that shouldn't be built. It's just like,
Yeah.
my biggest qualm, especially coming out this way, like where you see an old farm that's subdivided into a McMansion trap house, and it's just like,
Yeah, yo.
do we really need? We actually no, we don't. We have. Check it out. You can Google this if I'm not correct, but look up how many vacant houses we have in America. I think it's 16 million.
Wow.
So guess what? We don't need more houses, dude. The next person who bullshits
16
you,
million.
Yeah, right on the line. Yeah.
So the next person who bullshits you and says, "Oh, we're doing a good thing. We're bringing whatever affordable housing to this neighborhood." No, dude, you're not. You're getting rid of a farm because the farm is no longer used, but that doesn't mean it needs to turn into housing. It's like.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where like my moral compass gets involved, and I'm just like, dude, I need to find things that are impactful in this field because there's plenty of it.
Yeah.
Right.
So the environmental picture is a big picture, right?
Yeah.
The biggest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It literally is the planet.
Yeah.
In abstraction, though, right? So, like, when people think about environmental issues, 9 times out of 10, people's mind goes immediately to fossil fuels, right? But the environment is, there's a lot of things that go into it. So, you were talking about how, like, farms getting subdivided to create all these McMansions, right?
Yeah.
How does proper land surveying and evaluation of the land, how does that translate into the long-term impact of that particular area?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I'm trying to think of an example. Where I'm focused on is just making sure that, I don't know. I just like
it could be stuff like water runoff, or it could be stuff like
that's like, people don't realize that we're getting involved with things like steep slope ordinances. Like that's what we're like pushing for, and it's so that people can't develop areas of their property that are like this steep. Like we actually came up with a formula. It's like 10 to 15% slopes, 15 to 25% slopes. And that's like, that involves land surveying, and, it's just determining the steepness of a slope. And we actually were pretty successful in passing ordinances in most counties in this area because of people building. When you disturb soil on a slope that's like too steep, you create erosion.
Right.
So the next time it rains and you have like, a disturbed area, say you just dug a pit for whatever, you'll see that soil just take off. And the reason that's important is because this, soil ends up in the creeks, and it's called sedimentation. And it's like, that's our biggest problem. If you look at the Delaware River, if you look at the Mississippi River, they're running brown because there's so much sedimentation in there. Those rivers should be clear.
Yeah.
They should be clear. If you go far enough upstream of the Delaware River, it runs clear. And everyone's like, oh, it's just all the, no.
It's trash. Yeah, people say that.
It's not trash, though. It's actually the biggest contributor to, like, if you care about fish ecology or anything, any type of stream ecology, one of the biggest perpetrators is sedimentation.
I think we just expect that to be a thing that's supposed to happen.
Right.
Like, I mean,
we just think it's natural.
We see the Schuylkill River. We call it Schuylkill River Punch because it's just like, this is just what the river is.
Exactly.
Right.
But,
now, like soil being disturbed in ways that create erosion, right? That it's something that impacts wildlife itself, but it's also something that adds additional risk to people's properties 5, 10,
Absolutely.
20, 50 years in the future, right?
It's literally volume at the bottom of a river, right?
Yeah.
And in that sense, it's going to cause more flooding in the long run. And like, so if you, let's say, like you were saying, people being like, oh, we're building more affordable housing in this area, it's a good thing. Or at least that's what they're trying to say in order to get the zoning or whatever,
exactly.
So they do that. They develop a bunch of these housing developments that are really close on the margins in terms of like the retention ponds that they put in, the slopes that you're talking about, right? They essentially double the erosion factor And in the long term, when you do that 100 times along in the entire Delaware
There's
River
nothing
watershed,
left. There's no open space.
There's
left.
nothing left. And then 5 years down the line, yeah, you made affordable housing, but then half of Norristown floods. Like that literally happened like 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Norristown
There's
was
nowhere for the
underwater.
water to go. It's
Right.
called impervious surface. So it's concrete, it's roofs, it's roadways. There's nothing for the so that's our specialty is stormwater runoff. Right. That's like what my dad studies, that's what I study. We're analyzing what happens to the water when it comes down. And unfortunately, with our current weather patterns that we're seeing, in the next like 10 years, you're going to see longer periods of drought in the summer when it's hot as fuck, when we need water the most, when the trees need the water the most, and then a short period of intense rain after the ground is hard as a fucking rock. So it's going to happen in September. That's when the bad hurricanes come up the coast, and we're getting these like 3 to 4 inch rainstorms. And everyone's like, oh, 4 inches, that's not that much water. What are you talking about? But when you spread that out over a massive area and it's all coming down at once, dude, it's insane. Buckle up because, you know,
we've already seen it. Just the last like 3 years
100%,
here has had some serious flooding.
People that have never gotten flooded before are blowing up our phone at the office saying, we need to figure something out because we're getting water like just coming into our basement and like coming into our doors, and we've never gotten water before. And I'm just like, all right, I'll come take a look, you know, and we'll survey their property and we'll come up with a plan to avert that damage that's being caused. Yeah. And most time we're just putting in like catch basins, and we try to divert the water to an area that's going to handle it better. Right. Like if we can pitch it back out to the street, we'll do that. But that's really just a Band-Aid. That's not solving the problem downstream. Yeah. What we're trying to do is develop things like rain gardens. So every house we're trying to mandate that has to have a rain garden. So you'll run your gutters into this little depressed area, and we'll source a bunch of plants in there that have unbelievably deep roots. Some of these grasses that I've sourced out have 8 to 12 foot deep roots. Wow. So they're taking that water and they're recharging it into the ground. That's what we need to do. We need no longer, you mentioned retention ponds. Right. That's like what we did in the 80s and 90s. We tried to retain the storm water so it could sit in a pool of water, and then it would slowly evaporate back into the atmosphere. Yeah. Now we said, why are we doing this? Because we have aquifers underground, which is an underground storage system. If you know anyone that lives on well water, that's where they get their storage. So you get your water from an aquifer that's digged down about 150 feet deep. It depends on your well, but they can range in different areas depending on where you live. Right. Some places have to be even deeper than that, and they get down to this area where there's like sand, and in the sand is the natural groundwater that runs around. And what was happening is like we built so much pavement in areas that the groundwater wasn't getting replenished when it rained. Yeah. It would just go to the rivers, and then the rivers would carry it out to the ocean. Yeah. But the actual groundwater was not getting replenished, so people's wells were drying up. So we started saying, as engineers, we say, dude, we have to get this water back into the ground. And the best way to do it is to convert all these retention ponds into infiltration beds. Right. So that's what we're doing.
Is that what they're called, infiltration beds? Yeah. And I just want to make sure I can specify this. So infiltration beds are things which are more than just a Band-Aid fix.
Yeah, right? They're permanent. Yeah, they're
real deal. So I'm hearing something
real quick, because I think you're about to go a little deeper into that. I just wanted to know the grasses that you're getting for that. Are they local grasses?
They're native, and that's what's cool. Yeah, they're so cool, man. Wow. They're I went to a conference on all that stuff, and for the longest time we thought about doing these rain gardens and whatever, but the plant component is what we were missing.
You said infiltration bed?
Yeah, rain gardens, infiltration beds, or
infiltration beds is like the industrial scale version of a
rain garden. Would be like a home version that you and I could dig, with like a couple other guys. We just everyone gets a shovel and start digging a hole. Right, they're fun, dude. I did one at my house and it was awesome and it worked out.
Nice. So There's something I'm sensing in your voice here when you're talking about this
Excited.
topic.
Yeah.
And
Let's go!
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like, I'm hearing force. Like it's something that you need to really lean into because there's resistance. So
There's so much resistance.
talk to me about the resistance.
The resistance, for example, is like this older generation that's kind of dying off. Like my neighbor across the street, he's got these trees that their branches are breaking off, and I'm trying to tell him, like, he's got a property that's got a lot of drainage issues. And I'm just like, Mike, we can fix this, dude. Like, trees are a good thing. They actually soak up some of the groundwater, like, and
Right.
he's like, no, I'm cutting these trees down. And
Bruh.
he's like, I'm never replanting one in my life. He's like 70 or something. And I'm
Right.
just like, oh, come on, man.
Bruh.
He's an
So
example
that's
of
like-
the resistance. Like that old guard that
Right.
just thinks that we're just talking a bunch of bullshit. They're like,
Right.
you guys are just, you with your young ideas, whatever, man. We've been doing
With your
this
young
forever."
replanting tree
Right,
idea.
right.
So if rain gardens are something that you can grab your buddies, everyone grabs a shovel,
Right.
do it on your property, cool. Infiltration beds being the industrial
Yeah.
scale of that, okay.
That's
So
where you need,
And
like,
what
heavy
what
equipment.
is a quickly clarify
Mm-hmm.
retention pond versus infiltration bed?
Yeah.
What is the difference? What do those look
yeah,
like?
that'll give us a little bit of time to stall.
Right.
Yeah. So retention basin, it's just going to be a big pond, basically.
Right.
And they'll send all their water there. So when I say send their water there, you'll see inlets
Yep.
in a roadway. And this is like a McMansion, for example.
Yeah.
Well, and just housing developments in general.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're,
See
they're
so many-
developing
yeah.
some houses right
Yeah,
over there.
and you can see
exactly
it. There's
what you're
always a
talking about.
retention pond
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah,
At, usually at
100%.
like the front of it, where it's just a
Wasted space.
wasted
yeah.
space. Yeah, basically.
So it's twofold. One is the reason they kind of went away from them is we realized we could put them underground and they would be better because they wouldn't have to be dealing with like mosquitoes and stuff like that.
Right.
That's a big
Yep.
complaint you get from just water sitting there.
Right.
And B, it would be less of a thermal impact on the water.
Right.
When you get it underground, it chills back down to like 58 degrees, whatever the
Right.
groundwater temperature is. But when you have it sitting out in a basin, it can heat up.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's another thing I want to talk about too. It's like all these environmental impacts that we're seeing, it's not just from it's just so multifaceted.
Yeah.
It's hard to like
Right.
wrap your head around, but thermal impact is a big one.
So if infiltration beds are the industrial scale, right?
Yeah.
Then I can imagine there are municipal, state, federal, whatever contracts that could absolutely benefit from an infiltration bed, right?
Oh yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So like on a state level, right? What does the resistance look like with that? Because you can see resistance from, your neighbors, your colleagues, the people you
Right.
talk to, about some nonsense on the TV, sitting in
Yeah.
a Starbucks, all right?
Right.
But what does the resistance look like
I'll
when
tell you.
you're like, well, you hired us as the engineers.
Mhm.
We know what we're doing, and we can prove it to you, and it will add these additional values, these additional benefits,
Mhm.
right? Because to add this other little detail here, something that I feel gets lost in the whole environmental conversation is very often I get the sense when people talk about it that the conversations and topics surrounding saving the environment has absolutely nothing to do with the quality of life of people.
Yeah.
Right? It's as if like people don't matter, the planet is fragile, and we're the only things out there that can save it, which is just a really weird, incorrect, egotistical way
Right.
to think about
The
it.
focus has to be the harmonious relationship between people in the environment, not
Right.
just
Right. But one of the things I want to explore as we
Hubris
keep
is a hell
talking
of a
about
drug.
this, right,
Yeah.
is do you and we'll expand as we go on. Do you think that one of the things that is behind the resistance at higher levels, right, is that the focus or people's immediate thinking needs to be centered around, well, how does this affect our constituency? How does this affect the
Right.
people? How does this affect the properties, right?
Yeah.
And if I feel like there's this sense that people get, like they start anticipating, oh, it's going to be one of these people thinking the planet's fragile or something, right?
Yeah.
I heard this metaphor so many years ago. I have no idea who told this to me, but they were like, man, sure, we're doing a whole bunch of bad stuff to the planet, but the planet's going to be fine. If the planet doesn't want us here, it's going to shake us off like a bad case of fleas and start over.
Right.
It's about the quality of people's lives while we live here,
Right.
and how do we make it better for our lives today and the lives of people who come after us, because
Yeah.
it's not about doing something self-righteously. It's not about grandstanding. It's about like, well, you're supposed to care about people.
Right.
And if people live on Earth, then you need to care about Earth. It's
Right,
not
right.
the other way around. You know.
Right.
No, I
So
get you, man.
so at the state contract level, like what does that resistance look like? What are the reasonings that you get behind the resistance, and how does it complicate the work that you have to do?
Yeah, good question. And it's mostly has to do with politics, the political level. Once it reaches the state level, you have areas that you live in that are either primarily Republican or primarily Democrat. And you're right in saying that at the end of the day, it's people's lives that are impacted. That's where I love my job, because I don't give a fuck about politics. I hate politicians, scum of the earth, man. I haven't fucking paid attention to any of that bullshit for so long,
Right.
and I can't stand it.
You're
I just
probably a
do
lot
what's
happier
right.
too because of
Oh,
it,
no,
to be
yeah,
honest.
100%. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't. Yeah, I'm happier because of it. And it's like, I hope that with the next generation, I do feel a sense that they're drifting away from politics. And the reason why, it's just like, the example I can give you is that the town I live in is ran by Republicans,
Mm-hmm.
and the town that I work in is ran by Democrats. The Democrats, they will go after more like green environmental stuff, whereas you'll have some Republican, they're kind of like, that's a bunch of bullshit, whatever. That's like
Right.
greenwashing. That's this. It doesn't matter. And I understand both sides of it, because
Yeah.
you have a situation where you're being shamed for driving a gasoline vehicle. It's like, yo, asshole, not everyone can afford a fucking Tesla.
Yeah.
Not everyone can afford battery operated this or battery operated that. Not everyone can afford solar panels. Like, dude, I get it. Like, no one should feel guilty about living their lives and doing what they have to do to survive. Like,
Right.
but at the same time, it's like, can we drift in that direction? Can we make I just care about, like the streams, like what we're doing is trying to reduce flooding. That doesn't
Right.
matter if you're Republican or Democrat.
Right.
Do you want a
Right.
fucking flooded house or not?
Yeah.
Right. So
that's it.
It's a human problem.
We
Yeah.
plant
Yeah.
trees. That's another thing I'm heavily involved in. Not because trees reduce crime. And if you go in Philly, the
Wow.
most crime,
That's crazy.
they did a sociological impact study, and the highest crime rated areas in Philadelphia have no trees.
I would
Yeah.
like to, do you know like what the name of that study is?
Yeah,
Who
I can
did
link
it?
you.
I would like
Yeah,
to find that.
PHS, Pennsylvania Horticulture Society, paid a lot of money to have a study done. I don't know exactly the name of the company that did it or anything, but they actually
trees
created
reduce
like
crime, yeah.
a GIS map, and
Wow.
you can like slide the map. Yeah, it has like a little interactive slider, and it shows you the most crime ridden areas, and they have no canopy.
Right.
They've reduced that canopy. They've taken themselves away from nature. They have no
Right.
clue. They don't know, like, a tree has so many benefits, not just shade and oxygen, but the insects, the birds, everything, dude. It's all
I
together.
spend a lot of time trying to take a step back and look at like broader like social things that are happening, right?
Mhm.
And I think to myself, well, what's the result that actually matters, and how do you get there?
right.
Because like at the end of the day, there's a lot of people who there's like, oh, my team got a point,
Right.
but all those things are semantics, right? And the further you look into this, it's like, all right, well, it really matters whether or not people get helped and whether or not the solution exists. So part of what I'm a big geopolitics nerd. It's not that I find joy in it, almost the opposite. But part of me thinks about like, all right, so how do you use what is available in the political spectrum to just do what needs to be done
Yeah.
and don't give a crap
Right.
about the semantics, right? Because I can easily see, like, there's so many things in the environmental movement I could see being used as like a Republican campaign slogan, and there's aspects that I understand about the weird side of Republicans that, sure, we'll get into that if we get
Yeah.
into that, but think about it, right? It's like trees
Yes.
reduce crime.
Right.
So
I'm
like,
a law and justice candidate. We need to
I
plant more
found-
trees.
I
Get
found
the
a
crime
stat
out of our
from
neighborhoods.
from the U.S. Forest Service actually.
Yeah.
A 10% increase in tree canopy is associated with a roughly 12% decrease in crime.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's a big
In
freaking
Philadelphia,
number.
Yeah.
but
That
in
is a
Philadelphia,
huge number.
Yeah, in Philadelphia in particular, the study, it was mind-boggling. So that's what we're seeing, man.
What
is-
resistance do you think? What resistance do you encounter in solving these kinds of problems? Where it's like there is sort of a tangible, like, all right, we should do more rain gardens. We should plant more trees in this area.
Mhm.
Is there anybody who's looking at you guys trying to do that and saying, no, don't do that? Because
plenty.
Like,
And
can
the
you
cookie
think
cutter
of
people, man?
Yeah, can you think of an example that like you personally experienced that you were like, that does
100%.
not make sense?
Yeah,
Like,
right. So, like there is a certain subsect of people that are like cookie cutter. They like the clean look. They don't want some dirty looking. They think plants are dirty. Like the guy that I moved into my house, he was like this Italian dude, and he thought that plants meant insects, like ticks and bugs. Yeah, dude. And so this guy literally got rid of every single plant on the entire property. Nothing. It was just grass.
Wow.
And he put in, instead of like mulch around that, like mulch beds and everything, he had stone. So it was just like river rock beds, like
Dude.
void of all life.
So I'm thinking about this myself. Like, if I wanted to make my property more
Ecologically valuable.
yeah, or
High
even just
wildlife
like
value.
more useful for what I need it to be, which is just, keep on living and make my life better.
Right.
Okay.
Have a
Like-
happy, healthy house
Exactly.
and yard
Yes.
to exist in.
When I
you
think
know?
about that, I have no earthly idea how to do it. So this tells me
Yeah.
that this is more of an education problem than anything else.
Yeah, actually 100%
Right.
right. Yeah.
Right.
It is an education problem. That's what everything really boils down to.
Yeah.
Right.
And we failed, dude. Like our education system sucks, dude. We all know that. It sucks. But we're at the beginning of the end of all that. You know, like it's crumbling.
Do you think at a higher level though, there's people who understand the way that these things work and they just go, no, fuck that, because this way that is not environmentally sustainable makes us more money?
Well, okay,
Yeah,
so
probably.
honest to
probably.
God, I think that where that thinking comes from, it's not about this makes us more money.
Right.
So I think a lot of what it comes down to is that anything with the word environmental, ecological, global warming, anything like that,
Right.
Hot button items. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
represents pushing forward an ideology that there are
Right.
people who believe is like the beginning of the end.
Yeah.
And so like if any part of them like is like just to be safe. Right? Because it's like, yeah, I mean like, civilization has collapsed so many times and we don't want that to happen again. And this kind of seems like the start of that. And it doesn't make sense.
Kind of a blissful ignorance, quote unquote.
Right.
to
I
it.
feel like
Yeah.
people get lost in this idea. It's like, oh, well, it has to be profit driven because companies like,
Right.
no. This is ideological based.
Right.
And I feel like the
I
conversation
think it's
about
probably a bit of both.
I'm
Sure.
inclined to
Yeah.
agree with you
Yeah.
because
Right,
people
right.
are far more ideologically driven
Right.
than
Especially these
profit. But
days.
I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you what
Yeah.
you've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen both. I just like you said, like it's a bit of both. It's ideological driven. It's hard. It's like anything in life, man. Like I go to these conferences where you hear specialists that they might study one particular thing, so they're obviously like excited about it. Like that's
Right.
all they're focused on, and they're trying to relay that information to you, and you get it, you come home from it, and you're like, you get a little bit of that excitement yourself.
Yeah.
So you want to try to push it out there. And then like, that's when you encounter the resistance. You encounter people saying like, well, what else can I do besides a rain garden? So they'll like, oh, we can put it underground and just not see it and just have grass over top of it. Yeah. Oh yeah, we want that. Like where, rain gardens, I consider like, they're doing two things at once. They're solving the infiltration issue that we have from all this runoff, but they're also giving back a little bit to what used to be here before we fucking came in and fucked everything up. You know what I mean?
And
I
we
don't
came
think
in
of
and-
ourselves as nuisance.
Right.
I don't think as the human race as a nuisance, but I think that we've reached such a saturation point that there's nothing else that we can do that, I think it's time we give back a little bit. That's all. It's not asking a lot to plant a tree in your lawn.
Right.
It's really not asking a lot.
Right.
It's not. I'm not saying to stop doing what you're doing and be like some sort of like environmentalist.
Right.
I don't want everyone.
Don't
to
tear
do
it out
that.
in your house and live
Part
in a
of what
teepee,
I'm-
but like
Yeah.
Part of what I'm thinking is like there needs to be like easy, very clear, and easy to be forceful about, but respectfully forceful about one-liners that you can say to the cookie cutter people. It's like, well, you don't care about X, Y, or Z. Like, what kind of
I should
person
have
are
worn
you?
my
Right?
sweatshirt here.
Right.
It's
It's like
your lawn. That's what I have a sweatshirt.
Kill your
Yeah.
lawn. Nice.
There's
So,
a
like-
podcast about it. It's so good.
So like I'd be interested to have like a better personal understanding of like how this affects like kids, right? How
Yeah,
this
no, I
affects
get it.
your neighborhood, how this affects like the water that's coming into your house. And like if you can say those things, like what, you want to be drinking dirty water or like what? Like
Right.
you want your kids to get sick? That's crazy.
It's called
right?
tradition. That's what
Yeah.
we're stuck in a cycle of tradition. Oh, I played out on the football field. I want my son to play out on the
Right,
football field.
right.
Well, then my dad came along and he's like a hippie and he's like, do whatever you guys want, And I tried football and I fucking hated it. I got concussed on like the third day of practice and I said,
Right.
fuck this, I'm out.
Yeah.
So after that, I was like, I'm not going to be a football player, even though my brother was and my dad was and
Yeah.
all these other
Right.
people were. That's what we need. We need to stop to the tradition because people think we need all these athletic fields and playing fields, but your kids can go out and get exercise in the woods. There's nothing wrong with
Right.
that.
I-
If anything, that's way more enriching because you're getting connected.
I
Feeling stuff.
something I've thought about for a while, and the word tradition really puts a dart on the board with
Yeah.
this. So I think it's not about putting a stop to tradition, right? I think it's about taking other traditions that exist in like social contracts, right? It's like you got to care about your kids. Someday it's probably a good idea to own a house or something.
Caring
right?
about
Like
your kids is a good tradition.
you
You keep that
you
going.
want people to have good education. You want the country to be strong. These are all traditions that are not ever going to go away.
Right.
So how do we take those traditions of self and cultural identity
Right.
and use them in ways that make sense
Yeah.
to have a discussion about the environment?
Right. Or in ways that are just environmentally productive. Period.
Right. So like the
I
more
climbed trees as a kid. Oh, I
Yeah.
want my kid to climb trees as
Yeah.
a kid. How can we make that happen? By planting fucking trees.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
How can we have more
And it's
coming
like-
of age movies where
right.
the kids are climbing trees? You know how long it's been since I've seen a movie where a kid was climbing a tree?
Right?
It
I
has
feel like
been
I saw
actually a
so
really
many of
long
those when
time.
when I was a
Yeah.
kid.
That
Yeah.
is an interesting,
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
weird little detail. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of true, actually.
Yeah. I've always been very interested to figure out if there is an actual formula for how to begin a social conversation with very particular language and
Right.
go-to terminology.
At a big scale, you're saying?
Yeah, because like if you get people on the news talking about it, people on podcasts that are not this podcast talking about it,
Right.
Right.
you get people talking about it around the dinner table, then it's a self-sustaining system and the
Right.
topic continues forward. And I've always thought that utilizing more fundamental, long-standing
Right.
social contract and cultural contract traditions there's something in there that can be used to generate conversation so things begin to
So-
blossom
So
on
if you
its
can
own.
make a productive and simple rhetoric, like
Yeah.
plant a rain garden, something that is
so much in
appealing
life
and
comes
hooks
down
in.
to being able to
you know?
coherently create a productive
Right.
and simple rhetoric.
That
But
is
like,
true, but
I there's
The
got to
problem
be
we
in the
all
environment in
encounter.
particular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The problem we encounter is like there's so much preaching to the choir that goes on in my
right,
world.
and that it's
and in the
useless.
plant
It's a waste of
community
time,
and in
man.
the wildlife community,
Right.
these people that go to these seminars, that's what their lives are. You
Yeah.
know, that's what they care about.
Right.
So
That doesn't
of course
cross the
it's gonna
divide.
it's gonna
Right.
reverberate with them or whatever. It's gonna sound great and they're but then
And it
what-
does, and those
it
people are
almost creates like a
creating-
powder keg, right?
Right.
So that way when people within an insular community begin discussing it with people that are not part of that insular community and people don't know what the hell they're talking about, they're like, whoa, what do you not care about? Blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Right?
know
It's
what-
like, how does it become simple?
Yeah, I think unfortunately, ever since the 1920s, there's a really good documentary called Century of the Self. I would recommend anybody watch it. It's on BBC. It's on YouTube for free. It's a couple hours, but just watch the
Did you
first
say
hour.
century or century?
Century, yeah. Century of the Self. And it tells you about the downfall of where we're at now, how we got to this, where everything's individual. Everyone just cares about themselves, basically.
You're right.
The collective is being lost.
And
I got something to jump in on that.
Yeah.
So that is also something that's never going to go away. Something that I've wondered is, how do you use these, traditional things to create social contracts, right? To have people understand that if you take care of other people, you're also taking care of yourself.
Right.
Because
think
about it this way. If you're
in
sitting in a
particular,
room with a bunch of pissed off people and everyone's yelling at you, you are having a bad time.
Right.
But if you're sitting in a room with a bunch of people and you're all having a good time, you're also having a good time.
Right.
So even if things remain completely individualistic, people can still take care of their immediate environment, their immediate family, their friends, their space, their property, because it is individualistically beneficial. And as long as there's enough individuals doing that, then it still accomplishes a collective goal.
Yeah.
Right? So
We were just talking about
I
it the
spent
other
a lot
night.
of time thinking about that, man.
Yeah. And it dawned on me that everybody's streaming shit, and it's like these moments we have, like the Super Bowl coming up tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm not, biggest fan, but whatever.
I forgot about that.
It's one of the last remaining traditions that we have where everyone's watching it at the same time. Do you remember growing up watching The Simpsons or whatever?
Yep.
Right.
Your friends watching The Simpsons, you could text them, they're watching The Simpsons or whatever.
Lost.
Or Lost, Lost
was
anything.
a big
It's
thing
like
for my
Even
family.
not that long
Those
ago, I
big
remember sitting down with my
sitcoms or
dad,
whatever.
our friends, every Wednesday night. We'd watch Breaking Bad.
And now it's
You know?
everyone's streaming, so it's you don't know when they're watching it. They might watch it that same week.
There's a lot less
but-
cohesion.
Yeah, there's so much less
Yeah,
cohesion.
and that
It's
last time I feel like we had that was Game of Thrones.
right.
Even
I
that
part
do
of that
kind of
is-
feel
A lot of that comes down to the fact that most things suck today.
Right.
I'll just be honest.
Right.
It's that's 100% CGI
I'm
for
gonna
8
run with that.
seasons.
now I argue that
Like-
you just got to know where to look. But I also feel like all right, we're getting a little into the
Right.
weeds
No,
now,
I
but,
love it. I love it.
I feel like the individualism point, I do think that there is going to be a point that we that there's an inflection point where things kind of collapse
yeah,
and we
for
all
sure.
do
We're
start
there.
to look back. Yeah, because
People
for the sake for the sake of the environment, also for the sake of the fact that people are just more and more you can't avoid being aware of how much being so individually focused is
Isolated.
tearing us
It's
apart. It's
fucking
literally
isolation, dude.
it's
You know what's funny? So I've always been under the opinion that you cannot ever truly separate the full scope of the ideas of the individual and the collective. For instance, this playing off of the idea for streaming, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not all doing things at the same time anymore. So we're severing that awareness that there's something collectively happening.
Right.
But we're still creating a separate collective ideal, which is everyone collectively is experiencing more isolation. Right? And that's still a collective experience.
Right.
Yo, that's such
That's it.
that's
It's just-
literally
it's-
what's
it's
fueling
moving.
TikTok right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or
So-
Twitter or any of those things. It's they
Yeah.
get on there to talk about, they talk about the show that they may have watched in the last few days, but it's just we're so isolated and it feels so good to do the opposite. Some of these planting events that I've gone to where there's 100 people and we're all planting trees and everyone's just this is awesome. It's so meaningful. And it reminds you that we are social creatures and we are meant to work together.
Yeah.
We're tribal. That's what we are. We can't change that wiring. We're
Yeah.
not supposed to be talking on the internet and stuff. It might trick our minds into thinking that it's normal, but that's not fucking normal, dude. We
Right.
need to get back to what we are as human beings, and that's
Real quick, what are these planting events that you're talking? Are they local things that
Yeah.
are happening a certain amount, happening regularly?
They usually happen in the spring. There'll be a few, and then in the fall there'll be a few. Summertime's kind of maintaining, and wintertime the plants go into hibernation. So, but yeah, the winters have been pretty mild the past few years, so we have been able to plant throughout the whole planting season. But the big ones are awesome. They're the ones we'll find a park that is close to a creek and it needs stabilization. So we'll go in with what's called a riparian buffer planting, where we'll take 50 feet from the edge of the bank of the creek and we'll just plant the hell out of it with tons of trees, and we'll pack them in there 10 feet apart because we're trying to create a forest environment.
I can't help, like, I just keep imagining this one situation here, so just want to get people's input on it. Like, if so much of this problem comes down to education, right? One of the things that would solve it is in, like, middle school and high school, the earth sciences, biology, whatever it is at your particular location. It would make sense that these things are part of the curriculum, right? And I can't stop imagining something where it's like a required high school project to have these planting events, and then what you learn from that also transitions into not like a chemistry or physics, but it's more like just general engineering, right? Because like at the end of the day, that can also play into your math curriculum if you are including all of the things that need to be worked out in economics, because you're like, oh, well, it's cheaper to buy seeds than to synthesize all these hard materials. And we're going to get this much more benefit out of it for this much more period of time. This is going to be a question on your test. And like have more of the classwork interplay with other things to give people more practical real world skills.
Just incorporating going out.
I can't stop imagining that.
Like you said that, my first thought was I remember learning about watersheds in school. But then I know if we had gone out and actually it just stops. So we had gone out and we had planted some plants. We had planted it. If the whole class got together and like planted a tree up in like Esky Park down the road. I don't know, maybe we got to name that tree. Like, that would be such a defining moment.
Memory right there,
That's
man.
a core memory, for sure.
Now, imagine having
that's
those...
one of the things I'm in charge of is, like, public outreach with our tree commission. I signed up for it because, like, I was sick of seeing all these trees being cut down in our area, and then people think, okay, we're good now. Like, we cut down our tree, it was causing havoc on our house or whatever, and now we cut it down and that's it. And I'm like, no, dude, like you need to
there's a step two
that.
here.
Like everyone's so selfish, and that's where I was trying to rope in the idea of individualism, because it's like, this is my property, bitch. I can do whatever I want with it. Why the fuck should I plant a tree if I have to break leaves and all that shit? And I'm like, dude, I used to be like that when I didn't understand the collective.
I used to be like you.
Like, I didn't like. I'm just saying,
I know.
I didn't reach the level I'm at now. Like, it didn't happen overnight. Like, understanding that planting trees is a selfless act. You're doing it for the generation next to you. Like, my tree that I planted in my front lawn, it's not going to reach maturity in my lifetime. You know, like this tree it's a 1,000-year liver. You know, like this tree will live for 1,000 years. It's a really cool tree.
But it's not about
I love
you.
every part of this conversation.
It's not about you. It's about who's tomorrow.
And that's what stormwater management is, and that's why all these concepts are really hard for me to convey to people and teach people. And just, you know, one last little tidbit about education. Let's call it incentivizing teachers, dude. Like, all four of us could be awesome teachers, but there's no incentive for us to go do that because they get paid shit salaries and, you know.
My mom has a doctorate in philosophy of education.
Yeah.
She has not been able to get like a college placement, even a high school kind of placement, just because people don't want to pay that much.
So this is so relevant to you started the conversation. I was about
let's
to bring
go.
up. So at some point in the next 30 years, right, there is going to be a nationwide push for like public education curriculum overhaul, right? There is, right? So like something that I'm thinking about for the purposes of literally this episode of the podcast is, you know, there's people out there who want to make a better impact on teachers. There are people out there who want to make a bigger impact on the environment in a positive way. Yeah. And I could foresee something where when that education overhaul comes, it's going to be very important to be very loud about the need for a bill to create a pool of money for all these studies of how the curriculum is going to be created, right? The interplay between the different
and how
topics.
it's going to be beneficial in the long run and worth spending money in the first place.
Right. So the more people that are involved in this line of work now, I could imagine like, you know, a huge grant comes out after like a big conversation 15, 20 years from now, right? And I could foresee your company and all the other companies sitting together saying, all right, so how do we teach people about this? And keep in mind that they don't know anything about it, right? So I don't know if there's a question.
Open doors.
Like,
They need to open doors is what they need to do.
Like,
make it more accessible for people who may not be like a PhD level doctorate or whatever. Make it accessible to be a teacher. Make it affordable to be a teacher. And, you know, like, it's crazy the hoops that people have to jump through, and they're rewarded with what? Like, it's such a thankless job, dude.
Like, dude, teachers, nurses, cops, firefighters, and EMTs. It's like, for the love of God, why can't we just like pay people what it's worth? Nothing happens without these people. Like, nothing.
It's
nothing
an ongoing
happens
problem. Like, you know, there's certain school districts that'll get a big federal grant, and they'll get like a bunch of a few $1 million, and then it's like, how do we allocate those funds to be as like impactful as possible?
Right. I think people need to be firm as hell about, you need to get the professionals in the room, and you need people who are familiar with how kids learn in the same way.
Or somebody to come out and be like, here's how we should be spending the money, here's how we should change the curriculum, not let's build a new auditorium. Let's build 3 more athletic fields.
So this is bullshit, right? Man. So a lot of people are just like allergic to politics these days. I don't blame them. Yeah. But at the same time, like, that's how every bill works, right? There's basically a whole bunch of money, and then the only people who get to decide what to do with it are the people who engage with it.
Right.
So I think
there's part a bunch of mouths that are saying me. Yeah. The athletic department. Hey, we need new facility. We have this. We have shitty equipment. And then by the time the money hits the, it hits the table, it's just like there's so many fucking hands grabbing at it that it just disappears in 5 seconds. And
so like
there's a big problem.
At the end of the day, like, if there was something put out there that says like only your classification of company like could use it, that it doesn't work that way. But for the sake of the example, right? You guys could all get together and basically just say, all right, well, we're gonna all create a commitment here that we're gonna have like 8 months of discussion first, figure out how to use it, and then we're all gonna sign contracts and we all get our portion. Like, it's people expect that everyone's going to give them like a playbook. Everyone's going to, tell you the rules, tell you how it's done. But at the end of the day, like, it's all just people making decisions about things and people and stuff. And the longer that you wait to make your own conscious contribution to the conversation about the decisions, then whoever doesn't care enough to say, oh, well, here's the rules, I'll get a little something out of this, right? They're going to be the only people writing them. And so like it's important to
I think that's kind of already the
engage
case as well.
With the
definitely it is.
It is. So like, politics is terrible, and the only reason why it's terrible today is that the people who care are allergic to it. And like if there were more good people involved, I feel like it'd be easier to do good things.
I got nothing wrong with politics, but there's just so many layers to peel back. So it's like the reason I drift away from it is because I have friends that are deeply embedded in politics, and they're hanging on every single word that everyone's saying, and they're sending me articles, and I'm like, dude, let's be honest. I'm just going to tell you straight up, I'm not going to read this. They're like, they send me this like 5-page article. It's paywalled or whatever. And I'm like, dude, I'm not going to read this. Sorry, you're talking to the wrong dude. Like, do you want to have a conversation about it? Let's do it. Like, and I'll give you my opinion on it. But as far as, I hate that it's so inaccessible for so many people, like politics, it's kind of a rich person's game. Yeah. If you really think about it. You know what I mean? Like,
this isn't
bullshit.
What I'm about to say is not how it is, but I constantly think to myself, this is how it should be. But like us just talking about this.
Right.
That's what it is supposed to be.
Exactly.
Right? Because it's like, oh, well, here's the thing. What do we do about it? I guess we do this. Well, how do we figure it out? Well, we talk about it.
We plant more trees. We go out. We talk to people. We build the productive rhetoric.
Yeah, that's like, this is here, it's real, and now we're talking about it. It doesn't have to be anything more complicated than that.
You're right. No, you're totally right.
And right now, in this setting, it's removed from politics. It's just us, a couple guys hanging out and talking. But on a bigger scale, it has to be in politics. It has to occur at that table. That's where these conversations need to happen, and they're not, because it's semantics.
It's not even semantics too. It's brainwashing.
Right.
It's I've talked to my township commissioners that have been deeply embedded in their way of thinking for so long. To reverse that that's another problem that we run into. A lot of these rule makers and people in politics are old, and because they've, some of these positions are unpaid. So the commissioners in my township, they're all unpaid positions. Who's going to be able to be like in their 20s and 30s being a decision maker when you don't even get paid for it.
So
Like,
similar to the
they
issue
can't
with the
put a lot of
teachers,
time into it, you know
similar
what I
to
mean?
the issue with the teachers, do you think part of the problem is that there's a lack of incentive to be involved in something where you have the option to make good decisions?
Yeah, for sure. It sucks because like some politicians make tons of money.
Yeah.
And they're
Right.
they're accepting payment, you know, in other forms, like with all sorts of crazy stuff, and we don't even have to get involved in that. But like, yeah, it's like, I don't know. It's an elite, inaccessible field that it's
Right.
very hard to enter into
High
unless you
level
have
decision
money.
making that
Yeah.
is, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy though, because everything that you've been describing about like the positive impacts of what these things can do to like your property, your water,
Our
your
world.
life,
Yeah.
our world, right? I'm thinking to myself like, that sounds pretty good, pretty relaxing, right? And it's
Right.
it's like, oh yeah, I could look outside, know what that's doing, and know that I made a conscious decision to do that, and
Right.
feel proud that I made that decision. You know,
Right.
like there should not be that much of a barrier to all these pieces fitting together.
No,
right?
there really shouldn't.
When
Because
I-
we're not talking about rocket science here.
No.
We're talking about digging
No,
a
no, no,
fucking
no.
hole in your backyard.
Dirt.
Yeah.
You know.
Talk about dirt.
literally
Yeah.
on our hands, man. It's
Yeah.
like when I'm
Talk about dirt.
that's kind of like, and it's funny, we talk about collective when like-minded people that are all about these sort of things like social justice issues, they get involved. It's kind of like I don't know, they become a target.
Yeah.
You know, when you have
It's almost
this
like a poison
Save the
pill.
Meadow group or whatever down at FDR
Yeah.
Park, there's people from like the Republican side or people who are like pro athletic field or whatever, and they're just like, look at those like bunch of hippies, what a bunch of losers.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're just fighting.
I-
you just
get
want
into
to
a
you just want
labeling
to
and
fight
name-calling
in
game, and it's just
exactly.
like,
dude.
I-
It's like
I
you just want to
see
fight because you know
Yeah.
that's what you feel like someone did you wrong, so you think it's cool to like push back. I'm like, no, dude, that's not what you're missing. It like
Yeah, like
that's not why I'm involved in this. Like,
I see that literally all the time, and I also feel it very frequently. Like
Yeah.
there are times where like I'm like involved in something that
Mhm.
is like it's very practical, it's very common sense. It's going to lead to good things. It doesn't matter like what spectrum it falls into. And then all of a sudden somebody on a personal crusade gets involved, and I'm like, "Oh god, this is
yeah.
First of all, now nothing's going to happen. Second of
Right.
all, it feels like trash to work on. Third of all, no matter what I say to these people, it's not getting through to them that their personal crusade is destroying what they're trying to do. And
I almost
it really drives me nuts. And I feel like the whole like, oh, well, I care about the environment. And you're saying it as though it's some kind of social fashion statement. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like people really got to stop doing that because it's getting in the way.
Yeah. Some people, like, I just feel like when they are resisting and they're in that, like, I can just tell they're just so far
Yeah.
removed from whatever I'm dealing with. Most of the time it's nature. So, like, my, like, gut instinct is to just, like, put my arm around them and be like, yo, let's take a walk in the woods. And they would probably feel, like, so scared by the woods, whereas, like, I'm comforted by the woods. And I understand, dude. Everyone has different, like, whatever backgrounds or upbringings. Like, I don't expect everyone to be into the woods. Like, that's understandable. If you grew up in a suburban neighborhood where there wasn't woods, it's not gonna be like, you know, impactful for you. I grew up, you know, kind of going in the woods when I was a kid. That's my house backed up to a really cool creek.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate to live like that.
Right,
And
me too.
my house was like a piece of shit, but whatever. We made it work because we had outdoors. We weren't inside a lot, you know, like,
Yeah.
so that really impacted me. That's kind of like why it's important to me. And I just feel like they're just missing out, you know, like they're missing out on the bigger picture because they're stuck in their cycle, you know, and then
It's crazy to me though, because not only is it just like objectively strange to see people stuck in that kind of state, but they're also talking to you. And I don't know how to say this, but you're literally the professional on the topic. Like you're a paid lifetime career professional.
yeah.
It's not people like, do people ever talk to you and like think that you're like speaking to them from a place of like feeling instead of this is my job and I know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, and that actually helps, you know, like that kind of helps. Like,
Really?
I try to play my feelings into it because then it's more personable, you know, like
Right.
I was explaining to someone recently who was getting like flood damage in their backyard,
Yeah.
and I was just telling them like what I would do, and that's kind of how I play it with a lot of things. I always
Right.
think about first, like, what would I do if this were my house or my situation,
Right.
you know, and then that way I can connect the dots a little more clearly.
Right.
But yeah, I
And
don't,
it'll
I
appeal
don't get
to
like
them.
emotional about it, but
Well,
I
no,
get
no.
like,
I'm thinking back to like the resistance topic from the whole
Yeah.
like infiltration bed stuff. Like naturally, you want to be personable. You want to be able to relate to
Right.
people. You want to be
Yeah.
able to empathize, be compassionate, right? Because if you're not, then
Nothing's
frankly, you're a
gonna
monster.
happen.
Right,
Right.
yeah.
But even beyond that, like I could see that some of the resistance that you could experience at higher levels coming from the fact that people begin conversations with you under the assumption that you're only speaking from feeling instead of your lifetime
Right.
career of professional
Yeah.
experience, right?
Yeah.
And
No, I know what you're
yeah,
saying
and
now,
like
yeah.
where the line is drawn in people's minds is it's just interesting to think about. you know?
Yeah,
Do you
and
feel like you hit that a lot? Do you feel like
for sure, yeah. I mean, it depends on each case. It's
Of course.
really
Right.
different.
Of
And
course it does.
you kind of just go through the conversations with people and you feel it out, and you know if I have to go in this direction a little more because they're not quite understanding it. But one thing it's like something's going off in my head by what you're saying. It's like in all the schooling that you go through, there's not a lot of personal experimentation that people in my profession do, which but I do. Like I do go out and fuck around in my backyard and
Yeah.
build rain
Right.
gardens and experiment constantly.
But
And
that's not part of the curriculum at all.
not at
There's
all.
nothing- and-
No, but it
but-
gives me confidence into talking about
Right.
these things because
And-
I'm like
and it's
I'm actually
small-
seeing the change happen.
That's a very
That is
important thing
huge.
to
It's
point out
huge,
here
man.
because like when you find something that you feel like a thought just randomly pops into your head completely out of nowhere, like I could do this, and it's about some topic, right?
Right.
That is almost like a barometer for I'm good at thinking about this. I will enjoy doing this, right?
Right.
So I think one of the things that would be valuable about including something like that into a curriculum is so each person in the course, each person in the class has the ability to look at that barometer and say, well, is this something I want to do with my life, right?
Right.
And if they don't have that natural inclination to experiment because they were never given the option to, then they have something they can cross off
Right.
the list. But the people who do feel it can say, well, I'm going to put a big old circle around that one. And
Right.
giving people the option to put that mental circle around, there's
That-
something here from me.
and-
That's very important
and the
because that
experimentation,
kickstarts
yeah,
people, the rest of people's
experimentation
lives.
is a critical component to
Yeah.
the curriculum that is definitely missing on a broad scale, and not just in environmental stuff, but especially in environmental stuff.
It's everywhere,
like,
man.
like to harp on our example from earlier, like you dig a rain garden, you see it has benefits on your property, you see you have less flooding, you see some native insects
Yeah.
or birds or whatever are coming in as a result of that, and then you think in your profession, right? You're like, oh, we can do not a retention pond, the other
Right.
thing, right?
Yeah, rain
But
garden,
you
yeah.
see, like your little example also exists on a larger scale, on a larger
Mhm.
commercial scale.
Yeah.
And that is the case in like any one of these points where you could have had experimentation that is on a granular level, then like these same principles are applied on a broader scale
Yeah.
when working with people and money and real commercial scale
Right.
shit.
And this is why experimenting with your own property on these things is important because the more that you do it, the more your neighbors might want to do it. And
But
the more
not
that
everybody-
everybody
It's not even.
has the
It doesn't even
resources.
have to be
Right,
a property. You could be
Right.
taking these kids out to a park.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
why I'm saying like parks don't always have to have a stupid jungle gym and a freaking softball field or whatever. Like they can have
I
other
like parks
areas.
with woods.
I like
Yeah,
parks
dude,
with
I like
parks with
parks with
woods
woods.
that have like experimentation centers, and it's getting better. We're finally
Right.
like starting to have some outreach programs that do things like that.
I've seen
that
it
kids
as well
bring and
too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
check
what?
out a crawfish. like
Yeah.
I saw
Yeah.
stupid stuff like that.
I
But-
saw I was at a park near Gettysburg, Pennsylvania recently, where one of the nature centers had like a playground, but it was built almost entirely out of just like forest items, like
Nice.
like a walking like path thing, or like
Mhm.
like a jump and
Yeah.
and like monkey bars that are made out of sticks and stuff and things of that nature, where it's like
Yeah.
you can integrate experimentation in education, that kind of experimentation into the education in a way that is fun and engaging.
Mhm.
But how do we make that happen at a large scale?
Yeah.
You know,
It's tough.
So
man. It's-
I think
maybe with government, but I still don't think it's
I
granular
think
enough.
I think
to be
something
able
at
to
high
do that.
schools could do
Yeah.
after school programs,
right.
the Boy Scouts if they still exist in 10 years, and
Yeah.
whatever else comes after it.
Right.
The most common one that I know about that is understood by a lot of people is land navigation practice and land navigation training.
Right.
Like if you ever do ROTC or like you got to go to boot
Right.
camp for the army or something, that's something you have to learn.
Right.
Right. And it's something that like, you don't have to do it over like a 50-mile stretch because,
Right.
you're not in the freaking military, but
Right.
it's still something.
Geocaching, are you talking about?
No. So land navigation. It's
Well,
literally
oh, yeah,
learning
I
how
know,
to just read a map, use a compass.
Right.
Right. And like that's something
But you
that
can make
like,
it fun too.
Right.
yeah,
Hide
that's
shit
yeah, you
and-
can.
and that's what
Oh, I see what you're
geocaching
saying.
is.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that would be great. And you could even include like a kind of a simple to use like mobile apps, so it's like
Right,
it's still on your phone
Yeah.
for the kids who just won't put the phone down or something.
The point being, you can
Yeah.
scale it up and make it engaging.
Yeah,
Yeah.
For
and
little
there's
to
a
no
lot
money.
of there's a
Right.
lot of things that can go into that, right?
Right.
And it's something people could easily understand, put their finger on, be like, oh yeah,
Right.
I want my kids to know that. Sure, I'm not going to
Yeah.
cause a big problem at the school because I don't understand what it is.
Right.
Like,
So this reminds me of something that happened in high school. We had this adventure-based gym class, right?
Nice.
adventure-based gym.
That's what it was
That
called.
sounds
Okay,
rad.
that
It was a
sounds
thing
pretty cool.
for 1/4 of the year.
Hmm.
And I remember us like going out into the woods around the school, learning about the trees in the area,
Nice.
like cooking food on a fire that we made, kind of Boy Scout stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
The fact
That was-
that that's integrated into your high school is a big.
Yeah, that's
That
pretty
was,
sweet.
I mean,
Bravo
victory
honestly,
right there.
yeah. That was also the only time that ever happened.
Right.
For 1/4
For
of
a quarter,
One quarter.
yeah.
Yeah. Imagine if they had a whole set
Imagine
Like-
if that was.
It's crazy though because like they are just objectively important life skills to have.
Right.
Like you can't rely on a GPS for everything forever. You can't always be indoors for the rest of your life. It's just
Right.
it's a basic skill that develops character and gives you a frame of reference for
Right.
a variety of situations in life.
And honestly, if
You know?
but if we're going to continue to prosper and exist as an environmentally sustainable species, people need to know the basics of gardening. How do I plant a plant and make it grow?
Yeah.
So if you incorporate that into the basic high school curriculum at a government level,
Yeah.
which is just inherently going to receive a bunch of political flack immediately.
Yeah.
you
I
know?
think if it ever moves
Critical gardening. theory.
further and
critical gardening
Yeah.
theory
You'd be
literally should
surprised
be
how
a
many
class.
people
Yeah.
don't know how to plant a tree. I would say like 80% of professional landscaping companies don't know how to plant a tree right.
Yo, that's
How-
wild.
How
That's
wild is that,
wild.
dude? It's almost like they don't want to know, man. Like they keep it in the burlap sack, they dig a hole and they just ram it in there and they say, "Good to go, guys, let's roll out."
Right.
And they get paid because all they're trying to do is get a paycheck at the end of the day. They don't give a fuck if the tree survives, you know?
Right.
Where every tree that I plant, I know I'm giving it the absolute best shot at getting it in the ground and making sure that the roots are acclimated to the soil and they're going to hit the ground running, man. And that's like huge because
Okay,
It's just-
real quick. See, I feel like common media shows people putting trees into the ground in burlap sacks.
Yeah.
And so how exactly does one plant a tree?
the absolute gold standard to planting trees is bare rooting them. So we take a tree from a nursery and it's got a bunch of soil on the root ball. And we take a power washer or like a high pressure hose and we take all the soil off so we can see what the structure of the roots is doing.
Yeah.
A lot of times you buy a tree from Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever and it's growing in a pot. So when those roots hit the edge of the pot, they start to circle around and suffocate the tree. Trees
Yeah.
that you're planted from like regular, big box store nurseries have like a 10% success rate or something crazy like that. It's really low. They end up living for 4 or 5 years and then the leaves start looking weird, whatever. It just starts, dying slowly. And it's a shame.
Just because as that root structure develops, it gets more. I
It
see what you
suffocates
mean.
itself.
Right.
It just chokes itself out.
Right.
And so what we do is we strip all the soil off. We make sure if there are any circling roots, we cut them. and we prune them, and then we put it in soil, and we make sure the soil is nice and broken up. There's some good videos on it, but people don't pay attention. It's crazy.
Is there a good YouTube channel that people could look up on their own to be like, if I wanted to do this, like
Yeah.
who would you look up?
I
Who
would
would you
just type
recommend
in-
looking up?
No one comes to mind. Like Pennsylvania Horticulture Society has some good tree planting videos, but like just Google bare root a tree, and people get so nervous because they. I was the same way when I first started gardening. I'm like, I don't want to mess up the roots. I'll kill the tree. But like, especially right now when the tree is dormant, I've been bare rooting trees left and right and planting them, and I know they're going to do well. That's
something else, like especially for this generation, people could do to help the environment. Make a nice, high quality YouTube channel about how to do this stuff.
True.
Be well
Epic
spoken.
Gardening is one that does
okay.
it.
I've heard of that.
Awesome.
I've
dude.
heard of that.
He is so cool. I want someday I want to visit that guy. He has a food forest in his backyard.
Oh, for real?
He's teaching people how to like do the most with the least, like a
Really
quarter
quickly.
acre property. Like
Food forest.
yeah.
I've never heard that term,
Yeah,
and it
it's
could mean like 8 different things to me.
So he
What
has
is
a bunch
food
of like
forest?
permaculture. It's like permanent horticulture. It's farming and gardening, and it's not like the annual crops like corn and like squash and things like that. It's stuff that gives you.
I think I
food
was watching
all
a
the
video
time.
on this just the other day.
Pawpaw
Food.
trees,
Pawpaw trees.
berry bushes. Like he's all
Pawpaws
about
are
these
interesting.
crazy, awesome, cool. Like he knows this like kiwi bush. It's like a vine actually that produces hardy kiwis, and you can eat them. They're awesome. He's got so many awesome, cool shrubs, and he's to the point now where he sells them. He bare roots them and mails them to people in like wet newspaper, and you get them and you plant them, and then you're good, man.
Wow.
You got a bush. Like,
And
so I've been trying to dabble with that. Like I have raspberries, I have all sorts of cool little bushes and shrubs in my backyard, hoping that like tons of blueberries and stuff like that,
right.
and service berries.
Fruits.
Yeah.
Service berries are awesome. Birds love them. They're hard to get to, but they're a native Pennsylvania shrub that you'll find in the middle of the woods that, they're like an understory plant,
Right.
and
No,
they taste awesome.
A lot of our frame of reference here, like institutionally, keeps coming back to the Pennsylvania Horticulture Society, right?
That's just,
So, like, yeah, but like for people in other states, right? Like, what's the best way to find information about what should be there?
You go to your local extension. Penn State Extension is like way better than Pennsylvania Horticulture. I don't know why I haven't mentioned that
Extension.
yet.
What's
Penn
that?
State Extension has a whole slew of really awesome courses that anybody can take. They have a Master Gardener's course. They have
So the college, Penn State?
Penn State College. Yeah,
Okay,
they
yeah.
offer this for people, and it's like it's
Do
like
most states have this?
yeah, believe it or not,
Is
they
it
do.
literally like are they all
universities?
called extension
Yeah,
from the state
so you go to
university?
like say you live in Wisconsin,
Yeah.
you type in Wisconsin Extension University or whatever, and you'll find their website, and they'll have programs, and Penn State is awesome. That's like where I started off. That's where I went. I went for agriculture actually right out of high school. I was like, I want to be a
That's pretty sweet.
and so yeah, but Penn State, their extension program, they have it, in a lot of the local campuses, and yeah, they'll
Would there
tell you
be-
how to plant a tree right. They'll tell you how to, all the stuff that I'm talking about.
Would there be any other like important words to include in the search? So like Wisconsin University Extension, would you say
Yeah, state
horticulture
extension.
at state extension? Would you
Yeah.
also say like horticulture, agriculture, or are there any other like key
Yeah,
terms
if-
people would search to
If
find
that's
this
what you're
information?
looking to pursue, like
Right.
just pull up the extension website first and see what they have to offer. Penn State has a Master Gardener's course, but they also have like a Master Watershed
Gardeners.
course that
Master
you can
Watershed.
take if you want to be impactful and learn about stormwater management, learn about all this stuff. Their Master Watershed program is so awesome.
What's a term for like soil management, if there is one?
No, that would be
like-
under the watershed
That'd be
management.
under watershed?
They dive into sedimentation and all that stuff.
Sedimentation. Okay.
It's really awesome, and it's just like a lot of them since the pandemic. They kind of migrated to online.
Right.
They'll do like weekly webinars.
Ooh. How has the pandemic impacted people's ability to get out into nature in group settings and experience it for themselves, sometimes for the first time, right? Like how are these like community group projects, what's getting in the way of them coming back full steam?
Yeah,
Right? Because everything seems like it's at a simmer right now, and everyone's
Mhm.
like, oh, I'm kind of comfortable in my home office,
Yeah,
even though I
dude.
hate my chair. Like,
That's what.
you know, how do we get back out there?
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are like conspiracy theorists that kind of thought that the pandemic, like
Yeah.
that they really thought that this is the tip of the iceberg of us being even more and more reclusive and
Right.
easier to
Yeah.
control. Like
Yeah.
Mhm.
power in numbers, dude. They don't want us to get into a big coalition of like-minded people. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely
Yeah.
coming back. It's coming back.
Yeah.
It's
For anybody,
maybe not as full force as
So,
it
like,
was before the
real
pandemic.
quick, for anybody listening to this who might be thinking, yeah, that's definitely a thing. The way to fight that is just to not do those things. So you just call people, and then you put something together, and then you do it. You know,
Right.
like if you're not doing that, then you are what's creating that conspiracy.
Yeah,
It's
I know.
Not
that-
shadow people in power. That's
That
actually
is-
you
yeah.
in action creating that.
That is
For anybody who's
always
listening.
really frustrated me about it.
Like-
Like there are some people that I didn't expect it to come up as close to me as it has, and it's been like so it's a pandemic, but we're still living our same like individualized lives. We're not coming together in any other way to even if you think this is a thing to fight, shouldn't we come together about it?
Yeah, like if
Right.
we want it, if we don't
Yeah,
want to feel
yeah,
that
that
way,
makes
we
sense.
just, do the thing that makes us feel differently.
And so like going back to coming together and coming together to plant trees
Yeah.
and to do all of these different projects that I feel like
That are essential.
that are
literally
essential, yeah.
essential
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
our continuation as a human race.
Are there
Yeah.
are there any like organizations out there that like go to like YMCA's, they go to schools and they're like, hey, we want to put together this project for your school. We have a long track record of having it be a big fun time for people. Are there any companies out there that do that? Like
Yeah, I mean,
the
not too many. I'll be honest with
Yes,
you. Like,
but they don't make money really.
Yeah.
Well,
like
I feel
they would
like,
do it as like a like giving back type of thing.
Sure,
Right.
but I feel like you could make a boatload of cash doing that. You just
Sure.
go to all of the affluent areas and,
Right.
charge all the rich parents out the wazoo to send your kid to the fun thing. But then you
Right.
also give them a good time and good information and good
Trust.
experience.
Trust has
Like-
been fractured because
Yeah,
that's why
yeah.
we rely on tradition, because they just want it's
I
a
don't know about
reputable
that.
it's a reputable organization that's been around for hundreds of years. Let's go with them rather than like some new bunch of guys. It's like, do you want to send your kids? And it's like us four, and they're like,
Yeah, they're like,
maybe
"No,
not.
Right.
And they
So-
hear us like talking. We're like, yeah,
There's
kids,
nothing
we're
on
gonna
Yelp.
build rain gardens.
Right.
So
Yeah.
all right. So
So it's tough, you know what I
Trust
mean?
is hard to
Like, there's a
build.
trust thing. There's
Trust
a
is hard to build.
factor.
You want to do it, you
Hmm.
really got to push to gain the trust.
Yeah,
and
man.
it's going to take some time.
So like with all right, I wasn't expecting this
Yeah.
conversation to go anywhere near here.
Yeah.
Are you the only person who thinks like this at your firm?
Kind of like to the degree that I am fanatical
The
about it. Yeah.
ferocity.
My dad's there, but he's also like very practical. Like he knows like not every job can be like environmentally focused. Yeah, we
Right.
can have our environmental spin on it, but at the end of the day, like, we still have to
Right.
put bread on the table, like
Yeah.
we have to conduct ourselves.
You
We've-
said your dad's the one running the company
yeah,
right now,
yeah,
right?
he's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
president
Yeah,
of the
of
company,
course.
but like
Of course.
it's set up now where we're trying to make it easier and easier on him, so he has to have like less involvement. So I don't have like, he's not really my boss, I wouldn't say.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I deal directly with clients. And,
You're just independent managers at this point.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. And he's we definitely console in him. He's taught me everything I know, so
Right.
of course I'm gonna be like
Yeah.
on good terms.
Right. And when you have a serious question, you're like,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Let's bring in the pro.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Something really stumps me, and I'm like, you guys are gonna get the royal treatment. I'm bringing the grade A, our A team,
Right, right.
and I'll bring my dad on site, and he's hilarious. Like, you wouldn't think, he's just like he's just he's awesome. Man.
So like I'm asking because like I know with a couple different things, with the fact that there is an engineer crisis, there's a shortage of engineers, right?
Yeah.
With that, people my age and younger who want to get into fields for stronger ideological reasons than it's been in the past. I feel like people would be really motivated to be able to like affect these kinds of changes that we've been talking about that have all been kind of like up in the air. Like this should be a thing, but it's not. Like, how do you think
we can make it? Like,
do you
more...
think it would be possible to see a firm like yours who also has these outreach extensions who are doing all of these things? I feel like that's probably not been happening so much because of tradition and because of just money.
Yeah,
but
it's
like
money.
I think so
right,
much of it,
100%.
right?
Yeah,
But
it
people
boils
need,
down to that.
I think people also need to understand that it's perfectly okay to be passionate about engineering, and if you're really involved in the environment, you can engineer the environment.
Yeah, that's what we're all doing here, man. Like we're all having an impact on the environment. And as an engineer, we're trying to, like, you take a creed to try to mimic Mother Nature as closely as possible. That's where all these ideas come from.
Yeah.
It's like, what can we do to minimize our footprint here?
Is there a literal creed that you say?
Yeah, my dad posted it the other day on Instagram, actually. I don't know what it is. I don't say it, but like they came up with it, and it's basically just like that you're going to be like, engineers were never supposed to be this like big profit driven industry. It was supposed to be just honesty, integrity, and that's what our company is based on. Like, dude, like we don't make a ton of money. I'll be honest with you guys. We make a comfortable living, but like the other engineers, they go into it for money. They go into it thinking, okay, I'm decent at math. I'm decent at physics. Let me just go and be an engineer and I'll make 6-figure salary right out of high school or right out of college.
That's very real. As somebody who literally just graduated high school, I hear a lot of any of my friends who are going into engineering are
that's
not
what they're doing
in,
it for.
They're not going into it for passion. They're going like, this is stability.
Right.
This
I feel
is
like job stability. You're always going to be wanted. You're always going to be needed, and but that's not.
I feel like it's possible to make a lot of money, but you have to go into it with no expectation that you're going to make. Like, if you have the expectation, then you're just waiting for someone to give it to you. But if you're like, I'm going to go in, I'm going to engineer this, and I will make this much. I'm going to find the opportunity, and if it's not there, I'm going to make it.
Yeah. So for us, it's
hard,
like,
but
it's very
hard.
It's like just being honest with people and just charging them accordingly and sticking to our prices and like, we could raise our prices to meet some of the other competition, but like some of the wiggle room we have is like, we might take a little bit longer to deliver something to you because we have less hands on deck and, so we would rather have that freedom to, to conduct ourselves the way we do than
get a bigger paycheck.
Rush
your job or have tighter constraints on everything. Yeah,
like
that makes a lot of sense.
We don't have like most of the engineering firms you go to downtown, everyone's wearing suit and tie. Every single engineer, they're wearing like, and I'm just like, dude, what are we doing here? Like, we don't care about any.
You're
of that
representing
stuff,
the environment as a businessman.
Right?
What the fuck is that?
Yeah. Like, it's just that hierarchy that we're trying to get away from. Like.
On the, I'm sorry. I have this hilarious image of the Lorax just rolling up, putting a briefcase on the table. I speak for the trees.
Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah,
the profit-driven trees.
So that's my next goal. I want to get
speak for the
ISA
trees through
certified,
my lawyer.
international arborist. So,
ISA, International.
Yeah, I forget the exact name. Right. Society of Arborists.
Oh, right.
International Society of Arborists.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's stuff that I already know because I've had pure interest in trees. So I'm going to be fine. It's like.
But I feel like that sort of thing should be incorporated into the curriculum of being a civil engineer. If you're being in civil engineering, it should not be for a paycheck. It should be for you care about the environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
there's a
has to be about both.
It has to be about both.
Because
of
if you're
course.
in there saying, "Oh, I don't care about my paycheck at all," you're in there for some other self-righteous purpose.
Right, true.
You know, but
Dude,
it's like it's okay to be realistic, but also actually care about something.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that. Two things can be true at the
Right,
same time.
right.
No, you're right. You're
Yeah.
100% right. And that's how our company was actually founded. My great-great-grandfather, he grew up in a weird time span where when he was born, the creeks that he fished in as a kid were beautiful. And then the Industrial
clear.
Revolution came in,
Yep.
dude. And they built a fucking factory
Yeah,
right down the
actually
street from him.
saw
And they
that,
just
yeah.
dumped shit into the creeks.
Okay.
And all the fish died. The entire creek of his fish died. And it broke his heart. It broke his spirit. And he
Yeah.
said, I'm going to fucking make this my life goal to bring these creeks back to their former state. And that's what he did. He went to fucking Europe and he studied sewer systems and he built sewer systems for the entire county of Delaware County.
Wow.
That's
Okay.
what he did.
Okay. So going back to the isolationist thing, going back to what people are experiencing in their day-to-day lives today, right? I feel like people have gotten a little too complacent. It was like, "Oh, well, my spirit's been broken again," right? So how should people today think about the things that are breaking their spirit and turn it into something like that?
Dude,
What are
100%.
literally things you can tell yourself? How do you invoke that fire?
If there's
know?
anything I've ever learned about Mother Nature, it's that it's constantly reborn. And I guarantee if we all got together and we realized, all right, what's the problem, whether it's like fossil fuels or this or that, and we had an impact, like I guarantee that the earth would rebuild itself.
Yeah.
I just
Right.
know it. I've seen it happen with my own eyes, man.
Because you
Yeah.
can see it on the small scale.
Yeah,
When you build a
exactly,
rain
dude.
garden, it makes a difference.
100%,
right?
man.
So
It's-
when you build
it
a
really-
commercial scale one, it makes a difference. So
And-
when you do it on a global or national
Yeah,
or whatever
dude.
fucking scale, it's gonna make a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it starts with that granularity. It starts with
It
in
does.
education showing people what
And in-
little things make a difference.
Yeah, and until you feel it, dude, until you see it and feel it with your own hands,
That's-
like,
that's a
dude,
big
it's
part
it's
of it.
hard to convince other people of that. And
Sometimes the things that incentivize people is when they have that unique like emotional collage that they experience for the first time. They're like, "I want to feel this all the time forever and nothing else."
right,
What just took that away from me? Okay, we're gonna drop everything and build whatever needs to be built so that way this feeling exists forever.
And
yeah,
And I feel like people gotta, people are always like, they're really clouded by the emotions that are getting in their way. But I think it's important to take a step back and realize, hey man, like you can find the thing that punches
Right.
through, and then tell yourself that was a real thing, that was mine, that is me, and I'm gonna go for it.
it's definitely
Yeah.
a fine line too, because like those same feelings that cloud you are the ones that are gonna fuel you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
But like
which is why you gotta just
there is
grab 'em and say,
definitely
"Yeah."
dude, there definitely is nothing like planting like a direct example that I have. I plant a flower in my backyard. I see that flower grow for a while, and then like 3-4 months later, I see a wild hummingbird go up to that
Hell
flower
yeah,
and drink
man,
out of it,
yeah.
and I'm like, "Yep, I did that."
it's even cooler,
right?
when you plant a seed, man.
Right,
Plant a
right.
seed. That's the sick part, and that's the metaphor that we all need, man. Is
Yeah.
we need to plant these seeds, and
Right.
This is really interesting. So I think it's also important to point out that it's good to pay attention to when other people have those experiences, right? And
Right.
what triggered those things, right? Because like your thing could be growing a flower, right? And there's something like inherently beautiful about that. Me personally, I don't think that would ever motivate me at any
Right.
point in my
Right.
life. However, right, if I wanted to put together, like, I have no plans of doing this, but if one day I woke up and was like, I want to put together one of these engineering firms, that means that if I'm going to do that right, I need to keep my eyes open for people like you,
Right.
oh yeah,
right? And then I gotta create opportunities where I have the option to witness that in people and sort them out and say, I need you, right? And the more that we can pay attention to those like points of inspiration, the more that we can use that as like a
Right.
tether to bring us back to more collective ideas,
And
to more
suddenly the person
collective
with a
actions,
business
right?
person
Right.
with a business head is then giving the opportunity for the people with the environmental
Yeah,
heads.
before we could Google search everything, that was the instinct we needed to guide us through pretty much everyday life.
Right.
So that's why I look at our company is like my the guy who started it, my great grandfather. He he didn't have a business model. He just was driven.
He had a
by
mission.
pure like just rage, like. And
Yes.
he said, and that's kind of what's happening today. Like that's why I kind of migrated away from politics, is because you read this stuff, you read these terrible, sad articles about all these injustices going on, and it's like, I mean, unless you know how to compartmentalize that anger and frustration, which I don't sometimes, because I let it overcome me, and I'm just like depressed, and I'm like, dude, what am I doing? I gotta stop. I gotta put this away and stop reading about all these crazy, horrible things that are going on in this world. That's what this did to us all, man. Like that, waking up and reading an article about like these thousands of kids being killed every day and all this stuff, and I'm just like, man, the only thing you can really do is like make a positive impact like directly in front of you in whatever we're talking about. It doesn't have to be the environment. It could be personal connections. It could be changing someone's life in a positive way, just like helping someone, being helpful, not hurtful, like being useful.
This reminds me of a thought that I had when I woke up yesterday morning, and it was the craziest thing. So I woke up and like, I wake up every morning, like I watch like as many different news stations as I possibly can. I'm just like, oh, yep, there's the dead kids. All right, what's going on?
Yeah.
I don't know why, but that's
here's the oil spill.
Yeah,
here's
right.
the forest fire. Here's that.
So like,
here's another shooting.
Yeah, and like while that was happening, I just opened my phone and just mindlessly opened Instagram, right? And I looked at it for a second, and I was like, I haven't actually posted anything in like so damn long, right? None of my friends have posted anything in so damn long. I only really follow like my friends and a couple of other people I've met throughout my life. And yet there's always something in my feed, right? And then I thought to myself, so back in the day when like social media first started, right? We were all like inclined to put stuff out there, to be a part of whatever the hell this was, because we wanted to experience people in our lives at a more frequent rate. But now we're just allowing ourselves to experience whatever is happening instead of the people in our lives through the medium. So part of the thing about getting like depressed about politics and stuff is that if you do feel like, the state of the world is making you sad, I think it's important to point out that the more that you're able to focus on your immediate environment, your immediate surroundings, your home, your property, your community, your friends, and the environment that it all sits on top of, right? The more likely it is that more people will do that. And the more that more people do that, then what we start to see out there in the world at higher levels on the news and these articles are going to be the result of more people doing things collectively for the right reasons instead of just intaking and everyone's sitting back just waiting for something good to happen or waiting for it all to come down.
But if you just kick your feet up and go, despair is a thing.
Despair is a thing. But like, the more that you are a part of your own life, right? The more
taking control,
the more that starts
what
to
you intake, and if you just even sheerly recognizing, like my sister, she still hasn't recognized. I thought about something that's funny too, not about what we're talking about, but I'm in the same situation as you. I'm the middle child. I got an older brother, and I got a younger sister. So, but anyway, so like my sister, she's like intaking all this like horrible shit, and not only that, she works in the ICU downtown at Jefferson. So she's seeing like the tragedies constantly. And I'm just like, you need...
People think they're fine, but it gets to you, man.
Dude, she doesn't know how to download all that shit that she's processing. It's just in her. It's living in her, and it's fucking her up, man. It's like making her negative, and it's coming out in different ways. And I'm just like, you have to come to a point where you recognize that. And so many people don't get to that point because they're just, it's on to the next one. It's just constantly bombarding you.
It's important to point out that, like, sure, there are people out there that are made of steel and nothing's ever going to get to them. 99% of people are not that way. And so if you're wondering if you're one of them, you're probably not.
CIA handbook manual from like the 1950s. It's called bombardment theory, dude. And it's like the way to confuse somebody, like both of my grandfathers were like in the military, and they were in the intelligence. So like they taught me about this stuff, and they like prevented me from pursuing the military, even though I wanted to. They were like, "No, Phil, you're not." They like called people to make sure that didn't happen. I was like, "Dude, what the fuck?"
Wow.
Like I wanted to
That's
use it to my
crazy.
advantage because I wanted to not have any student debt, and I wanted to.
Yeah.
I needed discipline. Having parents that were like fucking hippies, basically. It's like, dude, I crave
Yo.
discipline. I gravitated towards my grandfathers because I needed that structure. I craved
That's
structure.
so funny, man.
And I didn't have any of it. And I'm just like, there's definitely positives we could take away from that. But knowing about some of this stuff, like the bombardment theory, it's like, dude, that's how you confuse people. That's how you make people easy to control.
Right.
Is
Yeah.
you feed them constantly with information, and that's what's being done to us.
Yeah.
This is the evolution of that. First, it was like TV and radio and
Yeah.
stuff, and you can read old
Right,
articles.
but that was more mundane. That's not in your pocket.
Exactly,
24/7,
dude.
you
This
know?
is
That's,
this is the epitome, and then they want to take this to the next level and put chips inside our brains. I know that sounds
Yeah.
crazy, but that's
No,
here.
it's
not.
it's
It's
well on the
literally
way.
It's well on
here,
the way.
man.
It is
Yeah.
well on the way.
And people were like, "Sign me up, man! I don't
Yeah.
fucking want to. I don't want a phone in my hand all day. I just want it all in here." And I'm just like, "Oh my god, dude,
Yeah.
are you
Right.
kidding me, man? Like, our brains aren't meant to be completely bombarded at all times.
Well-
we need peace. We need,
Yeah.
we
So,
We need some
I
treats.
personally,
yeah."
I personally kind of thrive in a nonsense negative bombardment
Right.
environment. I don't
Chaos
understand.
theory, man.
Yeah, I don't understand why, but like if I don't constantly have things to contextualize, right, I feel like something's amiss.
Yeah, no, I'm
Right,
like,
you know,
And
I'm
you're not
like,
alone in that. There's a lot
yeah.
of people
For
who
sure.
function like that.
Yeah,
for
and like
sure.
like for me, just like having the period of time where I can intake it all,
Right.
it can be as horrible as it is, whatever. Having at least a period of time where that happens, then I can relax after the fact. But
Mm-hmm.
but if I'm not up to date with it, it's like, well,
and it is a
I'm
catch.
suspicious about everything for
Yeah, but-
reasons I can't identify.
Right.
what's happening though is that we're getting
Oh, yeah.
this painted picture of how horrible shit is, and then people go to these locations and they're like witnessing it firsthand,
Mhm.
and that's what's special about it. Like, it's sad to see people like scared to go downtown. Like I'm not gonna say any names, but like members of my own family, they're like, I don't want to go to the restaurant downtown. I'm just like, dude, just because you're watching the news and it's saying there's shootings and stuff like that, it's literally, if you look at the statistics of it all, it's not even as bad as when we were kids. Like it's actually gotten way better.
Yeah.
And but
doesn't mean there's
you wouldn't
not a
know
re-
that from the news.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know that if you picked up the newspaper. If you turned on the 6 o'clock news, you'd be like, "Wow, shit's going to shit." Like
Right.
what the hell is happening here? So that's just my point. It's
Yeah.
just like we need to break away at some point and just start experiencing it for ourselves. Like we can't all travel around the world and everything.
It's very expensive.
It's very expensive,
Like-
but granted, it does.
But there's
enrich
plenty
you.
of world to see within like a 25-mile
Oh,
radius.
exactly,
Like
dude.
almost anywhere that you are,
Yeah.
there's so much to see
It's
that you
so-
haven't.
That's what
Right.
that's
You
what I
know,
did during the
like,
pandemic. I went
yeah.
to Lancaster and I was just like, wow, these fucking Amish people have no clue what's going on.
Right.
Like they're just like completely embedded in their own culture, fucking sitting there with a
Right.
axe, and they're just shoveling dirt all day. And
Yeah.
guess what, dude? They're happy, man. Like they're
Right.
happier
And
and,
it is-
they're
it is a
they're
bit of
physically fit
Yeah.
and yeah,
It is a bit
Put
of a
us all to
catch-22 in that like a phone can drive you
Check
to
the audio feed
despair.
really quickly.
With a phone can drive you to despair with like how you're looking at all this negative media all the time, and you're just constantly being bombarded with it. But also like it gives you the accessibility to be able to learn about how to change those
100%.
things, you know?
Yeah, it's the
Like-
gift and the curse, dude.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what it is, man.
So it's just
it
it's
can
just
enrich
like,
your life or destroy your life.
people
It's-
definitely have to adapt and find a balance. You
It's
know?
that's what I
that's the
like
key.
knowing the balance, setting those boundaries is the difficult part
Right.
of being able to be like, okay, I've learned enough
Right.
Yeah.
to go.
Right,
and
You're the
right,
balance. And you guys both. You're so chilled, and like I need that balance back
Right.
sometimes because like I get hype, man. As you can see, like
Look, you haven't seen me get.
no, I know. I'm sure everyone has that.
I will-
Right,
hype
everybody
train.
has that. For
You
sure.
seem pretty
He's-
well regulated.
yeah.
like,
right.
and that's important, man. To
it's a
have
it's a
those
mixed
people in your
bag
lives.
because there's definitely there's no correct answer.
Right.
There's
Oh,
no like
100%.
I still definitely scroll my phone way fucking too much.
Right.
Like if I took every minute that I've scrolled my phone and just had mindless like social media shit, I could have done so much more stuff. I could have
Right.
made so much more music, done so much more gardening, all these things,
Yeah.
You can always say what if, but it's always about tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Man, what am I like? Am I going to let this negative stuff get to me and like literally keep me from like watching the news and being upset about the news? Is that literally going to make me sad to the point where I cannot function, where I cannot
Right.
have a positive impact
No.
on the environment around
I don't
me?
let it in. I think a lot of people, like you were saying, like you don't let it impact you to that level.
Right.
And I just think as long as you're okay to do that, and it doesn't. See, for me, it's a subconscious thing. I don't
Right.
even realize it until I'm like
For
going
sure.
to make a decision, and then I'm like, wait a second, why am I resistant to this? Like, what's
That's a
going on
very-
here?
that's
you know,
very
The
like,
interesting
subconscious component to it is the biggest one,
yeah.
honestly.
And I'm
because-
like,
For
I'm just
sure.
like, sometimes I'm just like in a sour mood or something, and I'm like, why am I so agitated or something? You know,
Right.
and then I dig a little bit deeper, and I'm like, oh, I started my day off looking at this, and I'm just like, and it might have something to do with what project I'm working on at
Right,
work.
right.
Like some of these projects are for like thankless fucking rich ass developers who I can't stand, and like
right.
I try to spin it so that I can add an environmental component to it, but
Yeah, at the
sometimes
end of
they
the day,
resist that, and they're
yeah.
like, I don't give a shit about your trees. I don't care about your rain garden. Like, fuck all that. And I'm just
Right.
like,
So this is really interesting. Like when you're experiencing that, you're telling me it's not like a conscious thought to
it depends.
like
My
like
mind
a
is
lot of
always,
people operate in that way, and I've always wanted to learn how to do it
like,
because like for me, like it's like immediately like I feel what I'm feeling, and I know that there's a ping on my radar to look out for later in the day, being way too grumpy or agitated about things. Because I'm like, this is gonna get to me, and it's gonna get to me for these reasons because of these parts of my
shit,
personality.
man, that's your high
But-
level then. Yeah.
No, like it's actually kind of a real pain in the ass because it's really distracting sometimes. Because then I sometimes operate under the assumption that that's how everybody thinks, and so I'm like, wait, you didn't pick up on that? So what about this thing that you know is going to happen? It's like, what are you talking about, dude? And I'm like,
And it's also easy to get caught up.
I don't know how to get everyone caught up to speed here. Like,
It's also easy to get
Like-
to literally get too caught up to speed in that like,
Yeah.
oh, this thing's gonna agitate me later. This thing's gonna agitate me later. This thing's gonna agitate me later.
yeah, but it's
How can I
it's-
fix that? How can I fix that? How can I
so
fix
just
that?
so just like
And
so
then
just like your
know?
actual physical environment, just like the planet, right?
Right.
Things take time, right? And if you
Absolutely.
take care of it in the right way, well, nature takes care of itself,
Right.
right? So, I mean, this is one of the things I've always equated with like understanding the mechanics of the environment, which I do not know enough about, but I understand the symbolism. It's that if you pay attention to these things, it's just like, well, taking care of your land. It's like it's something that as long as you understand what goes where,
That's
And
part of the
what
problem.
affects
the
what?
education component.
yeah, like
Like,
it's
it doesn't tell you what goes where.
It's funny. You would think
but
nature.
you have all, it's your life, it's your personality, your mind. You literally have most of the answers. You just gotta put it in the front of your focus. It's that sometimes it just gets lodged there and you can't get rid of it.
Life gets in the way.
Yeah,
You
life
know,
gets
it's
in the
like-
way.
And that's a good metaphor for how I deal with some of these things that I'm intaking the negative stuff. Life will get in the way. My alarm will go off, or I'll be like, oh shit, I gotta get ready for work or something, and I won't like say this is gonna agitate me later. It just so happens to be absorbed into my
Yeah, you
psyche.
can tell yourself whatever, but
Right.
you need to, you know, like the mind is a porous thing, and you got to see like, you know, how porous it is on any given day.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
sometimes you got to do little checks on it. Be like, how's this really gonna hit me today? You know, and
Right.
sometimes you'll do stuff just be like, yep, okay, well, I should probably not do
Mhm.
these things today because it's
Right.
not gonna go well for me.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's true, and so that's kind of like the struggle right now. It's
Yeah.
the education. It's getting your word across without seeming like you're forceful about it.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
that's part of the stuff that I'm running into. It's it's challenging, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So if somebody fresh out of high school wants to get involved in your line of work and has no idea where to start, what would be the first 3 things that they do in order?
So, you know, they could just like it's like it has to come somewhat naturally, I think.
Sure.
You know, if someone's just like in it for the wrong reason, in it for money or whatever, I would say like, you know, go out and observe. Go to a construction site and see what's going on. Go to like an interesting looking environmental project that's happening and just, you know,
Yeah.
just kind of watch. You don't even have to talk to the people. You don't want to get involved and like slow things down. You don't want to piss off a construction guy, but like if you can just like observe something, observation's everything, you know, in our industry. Because then it leads to analysis, and that's kind of what an engineer is.
Yeah.
I'm an analyst. That's all I am. Like, and my grandfathers were both analysts in the military, so like it's there, you know, like that. That's there.
So
And-
this is an interesting. So step 1 is observe, be aware, be honest with yourself, and let it lead to a natural analysis.
Yeah,
right?
and don't listen to the like the narrative that you have to be good at math to be an engineer because there's so little like math. That's the old school way when we didn't have calculators and we didn't have computer aided design.
This feels like a say it again for the people in back kind of moment.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just seriously like that's what we need less of. We need less of the calculator, math minded people, and more of the, you know, ecological science. You know, not that there's not a huge crossover there, but like, you know, we miss a lot of the cross section of people that we want to bring in, and that's why there's such you were talking about a shortage. That's so true. There's a shortage of engineers, and it's because of the pool that we're pulling from.
So step 2 then, right? Like if somebody is like, I'm ready, I've done the first step, I want to get my first position. Would they look for an internship, an apprenticeship, or just an open spot?
Yeah.
What type
Any of
of
those
like,
Yeah.
what would be
An
the title
internship.
of the position that they search for?
It could be
online?
anything from like, you know, it's more about finding the right company, unfortunately, and experience builds character. So even if it ends up not being the right company, you will gain from that. And it's like, you know, it's just like with anything else in life, you got to just keep at it, like be persistent. And it's, you know, so there's not really one thing to look for when it comes to employment. I would say internship definitely is cool. If you can do it at a stage in your life when financial, you know, goals aren't a thing, then that's huge. But even if it's not, you know,
What's
Yes.
the exact title of your job? One more
I'm
time.
a senior project coordinator. So like,
Is it
so-
like civil engineering? Is
Yeah.
it
it's all, man. I'm all hands on deck
Yeah.
because like I have to be. And ideally, I would only be pursuing like that which I am passionate about. But this is the real world, and I have to do a little bit of everything. So
Yeah.
like, kind of a jack of all trades. I deal with surveying, anything as mundane as like a guy wants to put up a fence.
Yeah.
So we'll go out and we'll find his physical boundaries and we'll reestablish his boundary markers.
So on
Real quick, actually,
Yep.
being that applying for entry level jobs is terrible right now, and that there's so many bots and just unaware recruiters that are making things harder for people coming fresh out of high school to apply for a thing. There are other avenues like internships, like you mentioned, or like finding whoever would be your boss on LinkedIn for one of those positions and just hitting them up directly. Like what other kinds of ways of getting in there can you think of that would?
I think, you know, as corny as this sounds, but like the people that are involved in whether it's like some sort of hobby, like community outreach, like we mentioned before, like Boy Scouts and stuff like that, that's where a lot of like that kind of conversation starts to happen, believe it or not. And it's not so much grooming, but it's like, okay, this kid, I can see how he's like acting. He might be like interested in something that we do. Like he's kind of good with his hands, or he's like, you can tell someone's mechanically
So
inclined.
don't be reserved with it. Be open about it.
Yeah, for sure.
If you don't know something about a topic, start asking as many questions as
Yeah,
you can,
man.
so
It's
people
just-
know that you want to be asking those
It's
questions.
just
Yeah.
networking at its basic,
Yeah,
at its most
exactly.
basic level. You
Yeah.
know, if
It
people
really
see
is.
that you have a inclination towards something, they're going to kind of start to point you in that right direction, and you just have to go out there and look for where is a community building where there will be people, because
Yep.
where there's people, there is opportunity.
Yeah.
in any
Going
case.
going back to the fence project. So you're the
Yeah.
senior project manager. You get called to do a project, to survey and install a fence,
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
Like
I'll-
what are the titles of the people on the team for the project you're managing? Like what are their job titles?
I'm kind of like the first point of contact for like our website. So if you go on our website and you want to request for a property survey,
Yeah.
it'll come to me first, and then I'll delegate that to one of our land surveyors. So
So
I don't
like
actually I don't physically go out there anymore.
Yeah.
I started at the company. That's what I was doing when I was in like high school and shit. I would go out and do land surveying.
So-
We need more of that.
And land surveyor was the job title.
No, I was
specifically?
just a crew member on the land surveying
Okay,
crew.
Right, right.
So like old days, we had a crew, a survey crew, and it would be like three
Surveying,
people.
okay.
So like one guy would be the crew chief, and he would work the instrument, and that would be like my uncle or someone else,
Right.
and then I would just be like doing like kind of mundane tasks, like
Yeah.
holding a measuring tape or something like that, or and then you slowly build, and the technology grows, and now it's to the point where it's just a one-man crew,
Yeah.
and it's a
Right.
robotic instrument that we have, and it follows you around, and you
What?
walk around with a little like this. It's kind of like a tripod type thing, and it's guided and it follows you, and
Well,
it has
That's
like
crazy. A one-man
it has a tracker on it.
surveying crew?
Yeah, so that's all we have now.
That sounds so foreign to me.
Robotic total station is what this thing is, and it's
Robotic total?
$45,000
Oh,
for
wow.
this thing. So you have to, it takes a while, but you're replacing someone's salary, unfortunately. Like,
Right.
So-
like
This is interesting. So, just kind of like if you want to begin with a small coffee shop, you invest in like a really nice espresso
Right.
machine. You want to start a recording studio, you get some kind of small format
Yeah.
console, you get the thing. So,
Mhm.
if somebody wants to get into the business, one of the things they could do is buy one of these pieces of equipment and start
If you
hiring
can-
people who know how to use it.
yeah, if you can make that gain off of that, sure,
Yeah.
but it's not. I won't say it's 100% necessary.
Well, no, it's
If you have the ability to bring on another guy, then you can have one person working the instrument, and then the other guy goes around with the rod, and you just follow him around. That's like the old school way.
so
of
so
doing it.
land surveying is like one of like the introduction ways to get into this. And would you say that like land surveying crews, that's an easier position to land than some of the other ones?
Yeah,
Okay.
drafting is the other entry level position in this whole field, and they're all different components of the same
What is drafting?
sphere. So it's like working with computer aided design.
Right.
Oh,
And I'm
going back
trying
to
to-
that
That's what he
stuff.
was saying.
I'm
And
like
that's
so
called drafting?
Yeah, drafting.
I never
work,
knew
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, that's what we're starved for right now. We need more drafting, and it's kind of a weird pocket between like most people want to just get to the next level of engineering and all that stuff, but I've found drafting to be really rewarding, and I kind of add my own like artistic flair to it.
And what does that work entail specifically?
So we're taking data that the land surveyor is bringing back to
Right.
the computer. He'll offload it to the CAD program, and it'll basically start off with just like a cloud of points.
Right.
Mhm.
And if you zoom out, you can actually look at the points and kind of see what's going on. It's really cool. I wish I could show you guys.
Right.
And then so like you'll see like a roadway type thing, if it's or a creek or a
Right.
valley, and you'll see all these little
You'll see the
data
rough
points.
structuring of it. Yeah.
And then then we'll run it through our line work program, and we basically take it from that point and then build out to a full map,
Right.
And then we get into showing the design work on the map. Like if someone wants to build a structure, we'll show that on the piece of land.
Right.
So this property, for example, we would show like the contours of the ground, your driveway going up to that street. We would show that street, like a little portion of that street up
Right.
there. And say you wanted to build an addition out back, we would show it. We would show the existing structure of this house, then we would show the addition. we're all trying to figure out
And it would
what
be the drafter's job to draw that addition,
Mhm.
basically, like
Yeah.
make manual points, or
Yep.
just
I I could see people with a proclivity for like video design and graphic design
design
being real
being
good
really
at this
good at
stuff
that.
Yeah,
because like
absolutely.
they're used to like an environment of visual acuity and using
Right.
like a core software with things that they can get their own methodology for each
Yeah.
day.
Right.
You know,
so it's like
that's-
geospatial stuff, and
Yeah.
so yeah, and then like once you get to that level, then you analyze it, and you're basically just looking at how these particular structures impact the ground, and how we can design something based on that to offset the the cost of building that structure, because say it's grass or it's whatever, it's some sort of space that allows rainwater to get in, and you're further impacting your footprint.
Mhm.
So then we'll try to design a system to handle that new amount of impervious, we call it impervious
Right.
surface.
That sounds like
Expensive.
really no. That sounds like really engaging work. Like there's
Yeah, it's
like
cool.
a lot of the things I do outside of the studio, like the compartmentalized like critical thinking process of how to organize what needs to happen when for what reason.
Mhm.
It there's a similarity. I'm not going to get into it now, but that's really cool,
So
man. I can
typically,
see it being
A drafting person
draw
would
for
make
people.
that model for you
Mhm.
from all those points. Then they would go to you,
Yeah.
right, and basically be like, "So what needs to happen here to
Mhm.
make this happen?"
And that's when you
then-
get into like stormwater management, which unfortunately we're at a weird cross section in our company now where like I've gotten so good at this particular software that I work on
Mhm.
that, but it's like a dinosaur basically. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's like it's not that much of a dinosaur. If you guys saw it, we would be impressed. The plans we produce are top notch. Everything's
Right.
cool, but I have to take a lot more steps than some of these newer companies. They can do it like twice as fast. Mine, since I spend so much time with it, I'm gaining more and more knowledge about your particular property. So
Yep.
like the end result's going to be something very accurate and very like in tune.
Right.
And so I think it has positives and negatives, but
Right.
All of that sounds like fun to me.
and
Right.
what's crazy
So-
now, unfortunately, like now that everything's moved to subscription based, yeah, that part is fun. And noodling around with programs and stuff is awesome. Like we have the really nice, expensive new software, but I just don't. It's not. I haven't learned that language yet because we're so busy.
Right.
But the new stuff now they're getting into, which is kind of scary. And I don't even want to open up this can of worms with you guys, but I'll just say it
I
real
love
quick.
worms.
It's AI driven.
Yeah, I figured that's what
AutoCAD.
you were
Oh, boy.
gonna say.
It's getting to the
Yeah,
point now
dude.
where they're gonna have engineers, and they're gonna be. So we're taking a step away. It's like now the draftsmen are going. They've already pushed the model so far that draftsmen are doing like most of the engineering work, because they're using their computer-based systems to
Yep.
design things. So the
Right.
engineer basically at this point, if you're lucky, not like me, I do it all. So like I have to bear the brunt of all of that. But like the engineers that get paid the big bucks, all they're doing, they have like 5 or 6 draftsmen coming up to them, and they're just stamping the seal on the plans. That's really
yo.
basically all it's come down to.
Right.
Oh,
So it's a
man.
liability thing.
because
And I'm
we-
just like, dude, I hate that.
So, if people want to make a long-standing positive impact on the environment, it's good to get in now before things get really out of hand.
Yeah. AI is gonna really.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
crazy. how-
Because then it's going to be like, all right, this person wants to do a fence or a extension or whatever, right? Set XYZ parameters,
Yeah.
which is within the legal limits
Yeah.
or whatever. And then
Mhm.
the AI will produce whatever changes
Yeah.
need to be made.
Yep.
And then
there's
it's
going
just
to be
like
a lot
stamp.
there's going to be a lot of motivation to make the laws fit how you want things to be designed, so that
Right.
way they can be auto-registered within the artificial systems.
Yeah, and companies like us that are kind of old school, and I think there's 2 ways to look at it. I'm either
That's crazy.
we're kind of at a disadvantage technology because like we're not kind of like up to the current standards of all the different technology. We're kind of just like somewhere in the middle,
Mhm.
and I think when that stuff does come along, people are gonna be like just making a killing off of it.
Yeah, from everything that I've heard, though, I would pay more to hire a company like yours for my property. Because I trust passion more than not passion.
Right.
For sure.
Two
For sure.
is that, money is speech, and you gotta put your money where you care about it. And the only way that these other guys are gonna do things and make a big sack of cash is if people give them the money to do it.
Right.
So if you don't
Right.
like it, then don't pay for it.
Yeah.
That's it. Kind of important to
Yeah,
point out.
for
I have
sure.
some questions about my property after this.
Yeah, yeah.
Is done.
Yeah, yeah.
Record. I can't. It keeps distracting me because I'm
Yeah.
like creating a mental list of all the things that they are, and I'm like, just save it for after the
Right.
recording. Like,
But,
that's not what we're here for.
Yeah.
we're kind of running long.
No,
Right,
yeah,
yeah,
that's. I mean,
So-
thank you so much
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
coming.
This was fun.
I
This
didn't
is great.
expect this to go anywhere near what it did.
Nice.
I figured this would be a good idea just because, like, we've had mostly artists, like
Okay.
the name of the podcast is The Art of Possibility.
Yeah,
so,
well,
like,
it's civil engineering is an art.
It
It is.
is,
Don't forget that.
absolutely. Right.
It used to be even more artistic. Like the
Right.
bridges that my great grandfather designed are like beautiful stone arch bridges,
Right.
and
And you were saying all those old blueprints were drawn by hand.
hand, man.
You're
Yeah,
making
they're so
drawings,
beautiful
it's
too.
all the
I'll
same
show you
thing.
sometime, man.
Right,
Like
yeah,
really
please.
awesome, just like whole neighborhoods that were just drawn out by hand. Like
Right.
it was all just a theory, a thought. and
Right.
they brought it to life. So
So it's I was very interested to hear how this art form has developed
Yeah.
and how it should continue to be looked at as an art form and not just something to be given to a robot to be pumped out. Because in the same way that a robot cannot replicate art,
Yeah.
it's the whole debate now that AI art isn't real art.
Right.
Yeah.
AI engineering is not
No,
real
man.
engineering.
We should really only have the robots doing the stuff that we absolutely despise doing
Right,
from
right,
every single
right.
angle, right? So I think it's kind of important to point out that, like,
Yeah, robots.
it's if you really like doing it, then get in so robots don't take over doing it, because then
Right.
we'll lose it, and then no one will want to do it, and then we'll forget how to do it in the
Right.
first place within like 2 generations.
Because it's the responsibility of people like you and people who are passionate like us about
Yeah.
these things to get our foot in the door and prove why a robot can't replace us.
yeah.
100%. Man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of my passions is to be passionate about people being passionate about their passion. I'm serious. Like,
Yeah,
it sounds so ambiguous, but it's
it's
a
real.
factual
It's
statement.
real.
It is real. You know exactly what I'm talking
Yeah,
about. Yeah.
yeah.
All right, man. Well, hey,
Yeah.
thank you so much for
man.
coming on the
Yeah.
show today. We had a great time. It was a
Absolutely.
very
This
great
was a blast.
discussion.
And boom, just like that, we're back in the marsh. Thanks for watching today's episode of the Art of Possibility podcast featuring Phil Damon. Next week, we have 2 accomplished glassblowers, Gemma Hollister and Tate Newfield of Antolini Glass Company, recently featured on Netflix's Blown Away. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
The Art of Possibility podcast, featuring Casey Brown, Moses Stubbs, Bobo G, and Andrew Curry, is brought to you by Mechanizer Studios and AG Digital Media. You can find us on streaming services everywhere, and on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube as @ArtofPossibilityPod. Thank you.